Okay, let me get my gavel. I now call to order the Planning Commission meeting of March 9th, 2022. Could you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'll let you put the flag up, Elizabeth. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could remain standing for the statement of values, I'll go ahead and read those. As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and the will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all. Thank you. Can all sit? Elizabeth, if you would please call the roll.
Sure, one moment. Chair Biagini,
Here.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Here.
Commissioner Hero, Commissioner Wang.
Sorry, here.
Thank you. Commissioner Casey,
Present.
Commissioner Salam,
Here.
Commissioner Botnagar.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and so you all know I did get a message from Ricky Harrow tonight. He's not going to be able to join us. He's feeling under the weather. So I would entertain a motion to excuse Commissioner Harrow.
So moved.
Second. Priya.
Okay,
EKZ.
thank. Can you take the
I
vote?
sure will. The motion is to excuse Commissioner Hero, Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Ikezi,
Yes.
Commissioner Salam,
Yes.
Commissioner Botnagar.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion passes.
Thank you. Now I'll get into the declaration of commission procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Number 3, applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 2 minutes. The applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. Number 4, no additional comments will be accepted upon the close of public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Number 5, special procedures and time limits may be added to any items as prescribed by the chair. And number 6, appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Now, for those that are listening in, copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available from the Planning Division office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting, and they're also available online. Continuances and exceptions. This part of the meeting allows for applicants, members of the public, or other interested parties to request an item be 1, continued without hearing, 2, withdrawn, or 3, taken out of order. Are there any requests from applicants, the public, or the commission for a continuance or exception for any of the items on tonight's agenda?
No, we do not have any requests.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, the Planning Commission has 7 members. Whenever the full commission is not present, applicants have the option to.
I'm sorry, Chair Biagini. I'm sorry. We do have a report under continuances. My apologies.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We have one. It's on the agenda. So back to the Planning Commission does have 7 members. Whenever the full commission is not present, like tonight, applicants do have the option to continue their item to another meeting. So moving to the consent calendar. No, actually, I think we do first the continuance and exceptions,
Yes,
right?
I think that Planning Manager Leslie Xavier is going to speak to this item.
Okay, and this item is 22-371, action to continue the public hearing for the Climate Action Plan, General Plan Amendment to adopt the updated Climate Action Plan 2022, and an addendum to the General Plan Environmental Impact Report. Take it away, Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. Staff is requesting that you take an action to continue this entire item to your April 13th, 2022 Planning Commission hearing. And this is to allow for city staff to send out tribal consultation letters prior to the council meeting, which will be held in June.
Okay, do I have a motion?
To April 8th meeting as requested by staff.
April
Oh,
13th.
continue.
Second.
Thank you.
And pardon me, Chair, sorry to get technical, but the actual motion we need is to
Continue.
open and continue the public hearing.
Okay,
As Xander said, open and continue public hearing.
The April 13th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Xander.
and do I have a second?
I thought
Oh,
Commissioner Casey.
I second.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Commissioner Ikezi.
So the motion is made by Commissioner Chair Kuro, seconded by Commissioner Casey to open and continue this public hearing to April 13th.
And I don't see any hands ups for discussion, so I think we can go straight to the vote. Elizabeth?
Sure. Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Kuro,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Ikezi,
Yes.
Commissioner Salam,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar,
Yes.
and the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now we'll go ahead and move on to, I want to make sure I have this correct, the consent calendar.
I'd like to take both items off the consent calendar.
Okay, sounds good. We'll take both items off of the consent calendar.
That was Commissioner Casey.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay, that's, I'm sorry, a little backed up here on my notes. Do I need to get into public presentation or, no, wait, I'm missing something. My apologies. I think at this point, I should go to consent calendar. So let me just say what it is because we do have your motion, okay? But for those that are listening in, the procedure for this consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted, approved, or adopted by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation, which Commissioner Ikezi has already asked. If any member of the Planning Commission staff, the applicant, or a member of the public wishes to comment on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda, that's when you make the request. Items listed on the consent calendar associated with file numbers constitute public hearing items. And the 2 items on the consent calendar that you've asked to pull are 1A, Planning Commission meeting minutes of February 16th, 2022, and action on 1B, action on a vesting tentative subdivision map for 1530 and 1540 Pomeroy Avenue. So I think now we would just go ahead and move to, help me out here, Xander. I think I'm looking at some wrong documentation here. We move to public presentations or do we just go
Chair
straight into?
Biagini is
Yes.
Rena. I do see a hand raised in the attendees. They probably, even though you've pulled both items, maybe they want to speak.
Ah, okay. And Commissioner Ikezi, your hand is still up.
Oh.
I'll come back to you.
Well, Right. What do I do?
We
Karen,
can lower your hand.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so we have an attendee.
Yes, 1 moment, please.
Yes, I was wondering why the item would be taken off. I joined the meeting to hear your position and comments on 1B.
Well, I think you will, since we've taken it out of the consent calendar. Now it will be up for discussion. When it's on the consent calendar, what normally happens is somebody will make a motion saying a motion to approve everything on the consent calendar, and if the motion passes, that's like the end of it. But when it's pulled, it doesn't mean it disappears. It means instead that we will have discussion on it. So you'll have the ability to do so. Okay?
I suppose.
Okay. All right. So help me out, staff. Do I want to, under public presentations, move to that and take up the items, or take up the items under public hearing? I would think I
We
take
don't
them.
actually, I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
I'm assuming
would-
it's under public hearings. Sorry,
Yeah.
Xander.
Yeah, that's appropriate. You can do it under public hearings.
Okay,
We have to
so
public presentations.
we'll take it up, those two items under public hearings. So right now we move to public presentations. And this is the part of the meeting where anyone who wants to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda, you would speak up. So Elizabeth, are there any members of the public that would like to briefly address the commission on any item not on the agenda?
No, we do not have any hands raised or any comments.
Okay, then we can move to public hearing, and let's take up the two items under the consent calendar first. And the first one, I'm sorry again. I'm a
The
little,
commission meeting minutes.
yeah, it would be the commission meeting minutes. Commissioner Ikezi, you had asked for that to be pulled?
Yes, I'd like to add something to item 2, discussion of land use topics to recommend to council.
Go ahead.
Yep. So during this portion of the meeting, I remember suggesting that the city look into using the impact fee we collect from developers for affordable housing to help city residents build accessory units.
And that was something that you brought up in the last meeting that you want to add to the February minutes?
Well, I remember bringing that up and I don't see it in the minutes, so.
All right, let me do a quick review. If there's no opposition, I don't see why that couldn't be added to the minutes. And I don't
Thank
see
you.
anybody's hands raised that they don't want it added to the minutes, so I think we can go ahead and do that. Correct,
Thank you
Elizabeth?
very
Sure,
much.
sure, we can add that. So
Okay.
Commissioner Casey, just to confirm, in the minutes under item 2, we're going to add that you had made a comment about the city looking into using impact fees collected from developers from affordable housing projects to help residents build ADUs, basically?
Not from, but for affordable housing.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, sure, we will add that. Uh-huh.
Right, for affordable loan or grants to residents who wish to build accessory units. For increasing the housing stock or affordable housing stock.
Sure, I will add that to the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth and Commissioner Ikezi. And Commissioner Ikezi, you also wanted to pull 1B, and I think we also had
I
an
think we need to
attendee
take a
who-
motion.
Ah, thank you.
I
Is
saw
that,
Xander leaning in and I'm like, okay.
do I assume that's a so moved, Commissioner
Yes,
Cherukuru?
so I move the requested addition for Commissioner Ikezi's request be added.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. and we could move to the vote.
For clarification, this is for approval of the February 16th minutes with the addition that Commissioner Kesey mentioned.
Yes. On the vote. I know Elizabeth is probably getting ready to do the vote.
Sorry, I was trying to tell you. One moment, please.
Okay, all right.
So the motion is to approve item 1A on the consent calendar with an additional comment from Commissioner Akezi. Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Akezi,
Yes.
Commissioner Salem,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to the second item that was pulled, 1B, action on a vesting tentative subdivision map for 1530 and 1540 Pomeroy Avenue. Commissioner Ikesi?
Yes, I'd like this to be treated as a, a regular public hearing item because we had comments from the member of the, from the neighbor. Previously, I think these parcels came up in at a planning commission meeting many years ago. I'm not 100% sure. And the proposed project back then was rejected by the planning commission and the council. If this is the same lot that I'm thinking about. So I think it makes sense to discuss this.
Under public hearing. Commissioner Cherukuru?
I agree. And to the applicant and actually to staff, when we are talking about subdivisions with an MND, especially, it's not even just an ND. It's not I'd highly suggest that we not put it under consent calendar moving forward as well. These are high intense projects. We have as planning commission, we have very limited view on these type of large efforts. They are substantial. So it cannot go under consent calendar, especially when we have public feedback that is needed for these kind of projects. So it should not have gone into the consent calendar. So I second Commissioner Ikezi's pulling out. And in the future to also consider this as a full-on. We'd like a presentation. This has a lot of other questions and public comment that probably will not do it just by emails or letters. So just as a suggestion, and I'd like to see if staff actually has a presentation or can discuss this project at length.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. I think we would need a motion for that, right, Xander? Or can we
Well,
just move it to public hearing?
You've already moved.
You've
to
already-
public hearing. You can start now with the public, with the presentation.
Staff
by staff,
presentation,
and then
yeah.
go to
Okay.
public hearing.
All right. And because I do know we have somebody that wants to speak on it too, and I want to give them that opportunity. Okay. So then we'll go ahead and move into public hearing. On item one, we'll take item 1B first.
Through the chair, so we are in 1B, but is staff able to actually present on the topic? A staff presentation would go for any typical public hearing project?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If you want to lead the staff first before we open public comments.
Leslie, would this be something you take?
So we have our project manager, Namisha Agarwal, will be giving the presentation for you this evening. If you want to just give us a minute to get it up.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. This is Nimisha Agrawal, Associate Planner and Project Manager for this project. I do have a presentation, and I think I'm sharing the screen if we can confirm. If you
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Manisha, can you go in presentation mode though?
Yes, I will once I was not sure if you can see the screen or not. All right.
There we go.
So we do have a presentation. I did prepare a presentation. The reason why it was on the consent item was because this project was submitted under AB 3194. And the architectural approval is already done at the DRH meeting last year in July. And this this application was actually a vesting map, the condo map approval. I do have a presentation. We did receive public comments this afternoon, and I can go over the background and a little bit more into the detail about the project. So this request, as I mentioned, is approval of a vesting tentative subdivision map to subdivide 2 residential parcels with a total lot area of approximately 21,000 square feet into 8 condominium lots and a common parcel. And the location is 1530 and 1540 Pomeroy Avenue to develop 8 condominium units. So these are the sites highlighted in red, the 1530 Pomeroy parcel and the 1540. The total site area is 0.048 acres. The 1530 Pomeroy parcel is, the general plan designation is very low density residential, and it is zoned low density multiple dwelling, which is the R3-18D zoning district. And the parcel to the north, which is 1540 Pomeroy, is the general plan designation is community mixed use, and the zoning designation is agricultural. Here are some pictures showing the street view. So this is the 1540 and this is the 1530 Pomeroy, and this is kind of the street view. Sorry that we don't have a very clear picture. There's parking on the street, and so as a background, the architectural review to construct the 6 townhomes and 2 detached 2-story single-family homes was approved at the development review hearing on August 18, 2021. This project utilizes AB 3194, which is the Assembly Bill 3194, which allows to develop the property without having to rezone if the proposed project is consistent with the general plan and conforms to the objective standards of any zoning district that is consistent with the general plan. So here, the parcel, if I go back to the site here, so the parcel at 1530 Pomeroy has a zoning designation of low density multiple dwelling, and it's constructing 2 single family homes, whereas the parcel on 1540 Pomeroy is zoned agricultural, but the general plan designation is community mixed use, which is not consistent, and therefore the applicant chose to utilize AB 3194 to construct 6 townhomes on this parcel to the north. Also the proposed vesting tentative subdivision map, these are reviewed for general plan and zoning code consistency and conformance with the Subdivision Map Act. And this was reviewed by the Subdivision Clearance Committee and determined to be complete on January 11th, 2022. A little bit of a background that's not on the slide, but since we received the public comment, a previous application that was received on the same site, Commissioner Ikezi, you remembered correct. There was an application back in 2016, which was brought to Planning Commission, and it was referred to the City Council without a recommendation, and was denied by the City Council I believe it was in November of 2018. However, that was a different design and different layout, and it was a different application. This is a new application on the same site. Here is the site plan, as I explained earlier. So this parcel here is the 1530 Pomeroy, and it would construct two-story single-family units. This parcel here is adjacent to all the single family homes, and therefore the applicant sort of laid the site plan in order to be respectful and, kind of be in conformance with the adjacent uses. The parcel to the north, 1540 Pomeroy, would construct 6 three-story townhomes, and it is adjacent to commercial uses to the north and to the west. I can go back to the site plan, the aerial image to explain a little bit better. So if you see, these are the commercial lots and these are the single family homes that are adjacent to the 1530 Pomeroy project. Going back. They would have a shared driveway. This application for the testing tentative map is to subdivide this into a condo map with a shared parcel and have 8 parcels for the residential units. Looking at the project data, so the parcel at 1530 Pomeroy, I mentioned already, it's consistent with the zoning regulations. The 2 units that will be constructed will be consistent with the R3-18D. 1540 Pomeroy would be consistent with the objective standards of zoning district R3-36D. And therefore, that's what AB 3194 allows the developer to construct 6 units without having to go through the rezoning process if they are able to utilize the objective standards of any zoning district that is consistent with the general plan designation. So here is the lot size for both the lots, and a total of 8 condominium lots will be created and 1 shared lot, as I explained earlier. Here is the building square footage. Both the parcels meet the lot coverage requirements, and and also the density requirements in the general plan. The project also met the an initial study was prepared, and a mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act, and it was reviewed and approved at the development review hearing on August 18, 2021. And the vesting tentative subdivision map is consistent with the approved project, and it would not result in a new impact on the environment or significantly increase the severity of any previously identified impact. With that, the staff recommendation is to adopt a resolution to recommend the City Council that the City Council approve the vesting tentative subdivision map to subdivide the 2 residential parcels into 8 condominium lots and a common parcel of the property located at 1530 and 1540 Pomeroy Avenue. And that concludes the presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. I can't see if we have any hands up.
Oh, I raised my hand, Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Ikezi.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for the presentation. So am I to understand that the only thing within the purview of this commission today are whether to approve the MMD and MMRP? MNP and MMRP.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. No, I think what the MND was already approved at the architectural review hearing, at the development review hearing last year. What is before you is the approval, recommending approval for the tentative map.
Oh, okay. Okay. And what about the council? If we were to recommend to accept the tentative parcel map, then that will be the only thing that the council will be voting on?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, and it's because of the new law.
Yes, because they are using the Assembly Bill 3194, and I believe Xander can speak to that as well.
Yeah, there are two factors at play here. One is, as you know, the architectural review process was changed in the last few years. So architectural approval for this project did not come to an architectural review committee or the planning commission. Instead, it went to development review hearing. The first binding governmental decision is when you have to do the CEQA analysis. So for this project, the architectural review is when the MND had to be approved. And it was approved with the architectural last August. The project does not require rezoning, as Ms. Agrawal said, because of AB 3194, which says when your general plan and your zoning are inconsistent, the developer can apply whatever zoning district is consistent with the general plan. So they didn't need to rezone in this case, but they still do need a subdivision map, and the Planning Commission is still the first stop in the subdivision map approval. So that's what's before you tonight, whether or not to recommend approval of the tentative subdivision map, and then the City Council will consider that recommendation and decide whether or not to approve it.
Thank you. But the number of units is already, well, the developer is going for the maximum allowed under the general plan, and the law already allows them to do that. Am I correct to understand that?
They are within the allowable density of the general plan. Yes.
So the only thing that we can approve is where the lines are drawn. Is that what we're being asked to do?
Essentially, there are a number
Okay.
of findings that you have to make to approve a subdivision. Those findings are in the resolution that are before you tonight.
Right.
But under the Housing Accountability Act, you won't like me when I tell you this, you're actually limited to objective findings. So we have our standard findings there, but you can only deny the project if there's something objective with which you disagree. So we have, for instance, a requirement that the project be consistent with the general plan. That's one of our subdivision findings. If you were to find that this was not consistent with the general plan, you would have to identify a specific numerical standard in the general plan with which the developer did not comply.
Okay, thank you for explaining how this works. Okay, now I understand. Thank you. I yield.
Chair Piagini, you are on mute.
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. We have Commissioner Huang, followed by Commissioner Charakuru.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question to the staff is that you mentioned it's this project rejected by council before, and it's a new application, it's different. Can you just very briefly explain what's the difference? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So looking at the previous application, I believe that it was still constructing 8 units, but they were distributed equally, I would say, evenly throughout on the site. Versus in this case, the applicant has taken into considerations the adjacent land uses. So they have tried to construct similar uses as single-family uses that are on the parcel to the south. So they are single-family, since there are single-family residences already existing. So they have tried to construct 2-story single-family residences on the parcel on the south, and try to construct 3-story units, townhomes, where there are more intense land uses, commercial uses to the north, to the parcel on the north. And the applicant is here, and if they can explain the differences if they would like, if the commission would like.
Oh, yeah, I think that's good enough. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. I yield.
Chair, you're still on mute.
I am having more problems with my computer tonight. I can't wait till we get to meet live. So yeah, we'll hear from the applicant as soon as the questions from the Planning Commission have been completed. Commissioner Charakuru.
Thank you, Chair. So I am absolutely confused right now, and I'll go because this is so convoluted. So I might be losing touch with all my SQL knowledge and with my planning background right now. So last year we approved 8 units, and now we are coming back with a subdivision. Wouldn't one precede the other? Wouldn't the subdivision have to go ahead of the 8 units being allowed? Isn't that the first Subdivision Map Act requirement before you plan for 8 houses? How did we go with an approval of 8 housing units without a subdivision vesting map being in place? Isn't that by default an illegal division?
No, there's no requirement that the architectural will be done after the subdivision.
But how would any recommendation to deny objective outside, if the vesting map did not go through, what authority does the architectural board have to approve 8 housing units on a site that hasn't been even legally divided?
Well, then I assume it would go up as a apartment complex instead of a condo complex.
Well,
Yeah,
that's not the case, right? You're
Chair?
here today with a vesting map. That's a legal Subdivision Map Act requirement that should have preceded. The vesting map should have gone recorded before you actually allow any housing approvals or permit process or whatever, even built maybe, I don't know the ability you can explore. But I'm just flabbergasted about how an architectural review board, which is one of the smallest hearing bodies, approve 8 housing units without a subdivision map in place or approved by city council to even allow that kind of a conversation or even discussion before approvals. So I'm flabbergasted, that's one. 2, I mean, I'm more curious about the agricultural zoning. There was, of course, I can understand the general inconsistency between the general plan and the zoning. The zoning clearly calls out for an agriculture. Zoning, for whatever its purpose, it was intended to be agricultural. It may not be used today, and I'm curious, what was the original intent behind its agricultural zoning? Was there an actual orchard of sorts or something that was underlying to call it agricultural, and what changed over time? I would like to see the actual act that says you can change an agricultural zone without it going through a rezoning process. So Xander, I know you alluded to AB 1394, whatever be the number. I'd like to see that. Because I'm again, in an MND, that would be my first impact. You are actually changing agriculturally zoned land, albeit you can say there's no impact because there's no agricultural use on the property. But it's hard for me to imagine that rezoning goes just under a state law. And I'd like to know more. I'm truly asking it. What would be the actual language? If you could pull it up for me, that'll be really helpful. But again, I am absolutely flabbergasted about how we are a year later in asking to approve a vesting map for 8 units that have already gone through all sorts of approvals. I mean, it's to me, it's like if I were to divide today again with SB9, I probably could do it. But it's like me planning and already getting approvals for 8 units without even having legal right to the land.
Xander, do you want to take that on, or
Why don't
Leslie?
I take the second part, because I think that's easier to
Okay.
take apart. So you asked, how can they change agricultural land without rezoning it? So I actually have the statute in front of me, and so I will share the screen with you. But before I do, well, maybe I should just put it up. Maybe that's the easiest thing, just to show you what we're talking about. This is not the first project that's come up under AB 3194, but it is kind of a significant thing to simply ignore the zoning for a property. So I can understand the discomfort that the commission feels. I mean, it is basically taking the land use control of the city and saying it doesn't apply anymore. But we do have a general plan and a zoning ordinance that are inconsistent, unfortunately. We've been promising you a new zoning ordinance for years now. We're gonna get it to you soon. But until we do, we've got this really stale zoning ordinance. So we've got things like this where we've got a really old zoning on a parcel, and it's simply not consistent with our newer general plan. Let me see if I can share my screen. The provision that AB 3194, the law that AB 3194 revised was the Housing Accountability Act. You've heard about the Housing Accountability Act many times. It's a very long statute. The section number is 65589.5, and it has about, I don't know, 20 different subdivisions. The subdivision we care about here is subdivision J4. So I'm going to pull up what's going to be a long bunch of text on my screen, and I'm going to highlight J1 and then J4 and see if I can walk you through it. Let me see if I can share my screen. I have approximately 318 windows open, so bear with me if I pick the wrong one. Hope this is the right one. Share. Okay. Also, my computer's doing really strange things and it just froze. So give it a second to catch up.
It's that kind of day.
Yeah. Okay. It says I'm sharing, but I'm wondering if you see just the window or my entire screen.
You are sharing. Yeah, you are sharing.
Okay, great. Okay, so J1 is here. When a proposed housing development complies with objective criteria in the zoning code and the subdivision ordinance and the general plan, but the local agency votes to disapprove the project or to condition the project so it's at a lower density, we have to make a finding. We can only deny a project that meets objective criteria if both of the following conditions exist. Number one, there's a specific adverse impact on public health or safety. And two, there's no feasible method to mitigate that impact on health or safety. So that's a very hard finding to make. You cannot deny a project that's consistent with objective criteria in our general plan, in our zoning ordinance, and in our subdivision ordinance and the subdivision law, unless there's an impact to health and safety, there's nothing we can do about it. So that's the context we're in. We can't deny unless there's some big health and safety impact. But if we go further down, back to J1 again, it says when a project complies with objective general plan zoning and subdivision criteria, we can't deny it unless there's a public health and safety impact. But remember, we said this is not consistent with the zoning. So that should kick the project out right now because it's zoned agricultural. But that's just subdivision J1. If we go down to paragraph 4 of subdivision J, we get this. I'm going to scroll it up a little. For purposes of this section, proposed housing development project is not inconsistent with the applicable zoning standards and shall not require rezoning if the housing development project is consistent with the objective general plan standards, but the zoning for the project site is inconsistent with the general plan. So basically that sentence right there says, if your zoning and your general plan are inconsistent, you just ignore the zoning. Now it says that, I won't bother you with this paragraph 2. If the agency has complied with paragraph 2, just suffice to say we have done that. The local agency may require the proposed housing development project to comply with objective standards and criteria of the zoning, which is consistent with the general plan. So if we can identify a zoning that does comply with the general plan, which in this case is R336D, we can require them to meet the standards of R336D. But as far as agricultural goes, it simply doesn't apply here because it's not consistent with the general plan. So we can only deny a project if it is either not consistent with objective criteria or there's a public health and safety impact and we can't mitigate that impact. And if the zoning is inconsistent, we have to ignore the zoning and apply the zoning that is consistent.
And through the chair again. Xander, I do not disagree with any of the findings. I do not disagree with the actual language. This is not a I'm just more, again, I'm just going to use the same word that keeps flabbergasted with the process. Okay, we are assuming a lot of things are already in place when it's not declared as such. None of the public will understand that this is an agricultural zoning that is actually inconsistent with our own general plan. Two, the language in our objective general plan, I've not seen what that is, more than just saying that there are about what is an objective general plan. Does it have the ability to define more than just the density? Does it have standards? Does it have ability to guide housing? The process is what I'm questioning here. At the very minimum, we should have declared that, one, we have an inconsistency with the general plan, and this should have gone through a rezoning, at least to be on the consistent. You can say the same, it's a vesting map, it's a rezoning from an agricultural in alignment with an adopted objective general plan. But it cannot rule or just slide through that this is an actual rezone from an actual, and we are not saying deny. Everything that you read is you cannot deny. We are not saying it's denying. We are not denying the project its housing capacity. What I'm saying is the process should have included a rezone.
But what the statute says is if they don't go through rezoning, we still have to approve it. We cannot deny it, even though the zoning is inconsistent. Sure, they could have applied for a zoning, but they don't have to anymore.
Okay, we can choose to disagree. You're the lawyer. I will, common perspective just does not perceive that. You probably all know all the loopholes to it. But from a general awareness perspective, again, not to beat the dead horse, that's water under the bridge. We have a zoning for whatever intents, and I'd like to know the basis of its agriculture. Is the surrounding commercial property is still an agricultural zone? What is the adjoining properties zone? Or is this the only siloed ag zoned property, the 1540 or whatever the address was?
I'll direct that to Ms. Agrawal. I think she knows the zoning of the surrounding properties.
Nimisha, if you're talking, you're on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I will just look that up. I believe it is zoned commercial. It is not zoned A, but I will just double check.
Okay, because I'll be curious as to why only this property was A in all of its historic, and I mean, our zoning ordinance is probably older than most of us here, but the understanding that at some point there was an agricultural for whatever intent it was, I mean, I'd like to know the juxtapose with the surrounding. And if you're truly inconsistent, we are. I mean, I'm not doubting that, you know, there's no agriculture. I can see that from the photos, but it from a process standpoint, again, back to my raw basic questions, and you still probably will help me understand how we went through a approval of 8 housing units without a vested map in place.
So Commissioner Cherukuru, to answer your question about the zoning, it is zoned community mixed use, the parcel to the north of the 1540 Pomeroy. So, and they're both, one is zoned thoroughfare commercial to the west, and the other one is zoned.
So this is truly a siloed property.
Yeah.
That is very, very revealing, isn't it? There's been some activity there. Anyway, okay,
so
I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so our current zoning code was adopted in 1969, and at the time, you know, so that is the reason why we are looking into the zoning code update as well. So, I would also like to point out, as you mentioned earlier as well, that it is not occupied by agricultural users currently. It is occupied by 2 single-family homes right now. So it is a residential use right now.
No, but I'm trying to trace the genesis of that silo.
So
there
it's
must have been a reason.
Rena.
Yeah.
This is Rena. I mean, if you look at the map, right, you've got El Camino Real with commercial districts. That makes total sense. As El Camino developed, you would have commercial uses. You can see that subdivisions occurred to the south, and that property, that subdivision there is probably built in unison in one, you know, with a master developer. I mean, I'm just using some common sense of looking at a map here. These in agriculture, you can actually build single family. Historically, that agricultural uses do not preclude a single family residence.
Absolutely.
So it is possible to have a property that had no need to, subdivide in a massive subdivision. I apologize for the background noise. But I just wanted to say that I don't think that the fact that this particular property has retained agriculture means that it's significant from an agricultural standpoint. It may really just be a documentation of why and how properties developed, and that it wasn't part of probably the subdivision to the south.
And Rena, absolutely, we read these maps all day in our career. So good hypothesis, and I agree with it. It just didn't have trigger any large single families. They're absolutely allowed in agricultural, well known, but it's just then the awareness that you have one followed for all its practical purposes inconsistent zone. But again, to the point that we have now a property that's come forward, but it didn't go through a subdivision process, but was approved for 8 housing units on an agricultural,
once again,
old agricultural lot.
I'll just amplify Xander's perspective here, right? Because I think he said it, but it is AB 3194. AB 3194 state laws have said when you have these problems, like cities like us, we have this zoning that is not consistent with our general plan. They don't want to create an additional hurdle for people to rezone.
But the third point in that, Rena, is subdivision.
Yes, that's why you are here today for a subdivision.
But not after. It should not have been done after.
The general plan allows for, just like when we have an apartment complex, right? They don't necessarily have to propose subdivision. They can propose the number of units. When you have a subdivision, when people can sell off these individual properties, that's the specific action.
So that's what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this is here. It's for the subdivision of the 8 units that have been allowed per the general plan, but to actually allow them to be subdivided. I don't know if anyone wants to correct me on that, but I just wanted to connect the dots here.
No, I think that's accurate. I think that if I could summarize what I think is irking you, Commissioner Jarkuru, is that the architectural was approved with the environmental document. If it had all been done together, subdivision, architectural, and environmental document, then it'd be the Planning Commission that was approving the environmental document, or if it had been done in the reverse order. If the subdivision with the environmental document, then it'd be the Planning Commission making that determination. And you frequently have some very precise inputs on our environmental documents. I know you review them very carefully. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you would have liked to have been the one to have reviewed that document rather than having it approved before.
Correct. I mean, who's to say that this lot should not have had 4? I mean, from a recommendation, from a subdivision. If we are reviewing it today from a public comment perspective and from all of the environmental review aspect of it, outside of all the objective design standards, we could, from a planning commission perspective, we could have very well said, no, do 4 units on this, not 8.
Well, you could have said you disagree with the conclusions of the environmental document. I don't know that you could have said only do 4 units, because if they're consistent with the objective standards in our subdivision ordinance, then you might not be able to make that determination.
So when you say subdivision ordinance, which one are you referencing? What is the subdivision ordinance?
Chapter 17.05. All cities are required to have a subdivision ordinance. It basically mirrors the Subdivision Map Act with some minor tweaks. So,
yeah, that's what I was having in my mind. That's why I'm trying to, Subdivision Map Act says one.
Right, it's very similar to the Subdivision Map Act. We can go beyond the Subdivision Map Act in some ways. So for instance, Subdivision Map Act for 4 or fewer parcels. If you're going to subdivide 4 or fewer parcels, you just need a parcel map. You don't need a tentative and a final. You just need one. But in Santa Clara, we actually do require both a tentative and a final, even when there's 4 or fewer parcels. That's something unique to our subdivision ordinance. But in most respects, our subdivision ordinance is the same as the Subdivision Map Act, because we can't have less restrictive standards than the Subdivision Map Act.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just voice the concern, this seems like the tail wagging the dog, only because technically a PD, yeah, I mean, it could have gone through an architectural review board, 8 houses, but it would have been a PD. There would have been a different set of conditions, different set of, recommendations. But now you've given 8, and then you're coming and saying these are 8 legal lots, which is literally a step away, because a PD would have had a more cohesive, this is a PD, versus now they're individual lots. Tomorrow's SB9, these are individual lots that are also can avail SB9, versus a PD would have had a more restricted.
I think, can I add something, Chair? It's important to note for this one that it's a condominium map, so it's a common lot, and each unit is its own condo. So that's a little bit.
Can they sell
different.
the lots individually?
They can sell the units individually, correct?
That's what I'm
But
saying.
it is just the unit, so there would be no space to subdivide that and build a second unit on. I guess I would have to defer to Xander of whether or not you could subdivide the townhome itself and put a demising wall down a townhome. I don't think so.
Well, anything's possible with creativity. Let's not rule anything out in the future. Airspace is still available. Basements are still available. Yeah. So let's not, come to hypothesis on that assumptions. But, I think I've stated my case well enough. The commission probably understands. But in all of the efforts that the city tries to, one, there is a goal to be transparent and the goal to be preemptive of anything. Knowingly and unknowingly, we have inconsistencies. We are working to correct them. But here is an actual process that has been approved. And now you're coming at the tail end of it to say, well, the vesting map has to happen if these 8 houses have to be built.
Well, I would suggest the process would have been very similar if it was in the opposite order. I mean, keep in mind,
let's take the hypothesis. What if we deny the recommendation to approve this vesting map? Or the city council decides to deny the vesting map. Let's go on the hypothesis. What would be the ramifications?
Well, as I mentioned, it would have to be based on objective standards.
Okay, so, let's say we find objective standards.
Okay, well, then that would be the end of the project. I assume the developer would then sue us.
I know, but I'm trying to say, you've just taken away additional ability from the city.
But okay, so the subdivision decision you're making, as I keep mentioning, has to be based on objective standards. The architectural decision was also based on objective standards. That is the universe we live in now for multifamily residential development. The only difference, in doing one before the other is that the environmental document was decided by the hearing officer at the development review hearing instead of the commission or the council. But otherwise, I'm having a little trouble seeing what, I mean,
I'm just, when we say design standards, design objectives, anything is a design objective. I can say 4 units are a design objective. And of course, we will refer to the general plan. If it was not 8 and if it had, if it was 10. On the general plan, zoning, of course, it doesn't even state anything. The Subdivision Map Act or the what would have been the ARB's ability to say, well, you don't have a vesting map approval, a city council approval on this. I'm just curious, would the ARB have stopped that 10-house development?
Sarah, if I may, they don't necessarily need a tentative map. I mean, they could possibly do this with an easement for the common driveway access. The only problem is they wouldn't be able to sell the individual units.
That is where I'm going with this.
They could rent them. Yeah.
You understand where the profit margin is coming is because of the sellability of each unit by itself versus a PD or any other, general. There's a general cohesiveness to the limitations of a PD versus an individual condo that can be sold off to anybody, right? They're really legal lots. They're small, but they're legal lots. So anyway, I'll rest my case. I think I've said enough, but thank you for hearing me and thanks to the chair. I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair Kuru. I had a question and then we'll move to Commissioner Ikezi. Yeah, I'm confused too. Starting with how it was on the consent calendar, but I'm not going to beat that dead horse. I actually drove by it so I could kind of get a better picture. Can you go back to that last screen you were sharing? I don't know who was
Chair,
handling.
do you want the zoning map I had up, or do you want the?
It's the one, it's the last one that we
subdivision.
had up that had the colored blocks.
Okay.
Okay, because I have a question on that.
This one?
Yeah, there you go. All right, so I drove by it. This, what do you call that color? Salmon color is See's Candy, right? Is See's Candy extend through the green color? Because next to that is a little strip mall with a liquor store. And then after the liquor store, we have these 2 single-family residences. Now I'm going to assume that this orange color is the little strip mall with the liquor store. And I'm going to assume that the green and the salmon all together is the See's Candy. Am I correct?
Okay, so See's Candy's on the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
These are the 2 properties in question. I think this is the liquor store, correct, Nisha?
That's what
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
there's something in the back of there.
So can we go back to the, that was in the PowerPoint, the map of the, where it showed, you know, the 8 units and the 2 units? The line drawing. I don't know how else to describe it. It's in the PowerPoint.
Yes, I will share that.
The site plan.
Thank you. Yes. Because that'll make my question a lot clearer. I don't know.
I'm just trying to share the right.
That's okay, Namisha. I understand.
Okay, do I have the right screen?
There we are. Okay.
Right.
So where the 6 units are,
Yes.
that backs up to the little strip mall and See's Candy, correct?
That's correct. And I will
Okay.
just back to the aerial image if I may. Just that might, it's small, but
Yeah.
probably you can
Yeah,
see
it's there.
that the commercial user.
I gotcha. All right. So here's where my question comes up. And it tags base with what Commissioner Cherukuru was talking about. So when I look at these 1530 and 1540, okay, 1530 in an attempt to mitigate any issues with 1502, it's going to be a 2-story unit
Yes.
at 1530?
Yes, that's two-story units.
Right. So then here comes my question. I mean, a lot of times we talk about, or we did talk about, when you're building a 2-story unit and you're right up against a residential property like 1502, I don't know, because it either wasn't done together or we didn't have the subdivision approved first. I don't know that that second story isn't going to have eyes right onto 1502. I don't know that. That would be something that would be a concern of mine, which is where I'm struggling too with, we didn't okay the subdividing before we okayed the buildings. And I'm kind of understanding, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that AB 3194 is such that being in place now, and it wasn't in place in 2016, is why we're in this conundrum today. But then how do I know that 1530 isn't going to have a 2nd-story window that's eyes on 1502? Because if I was a neighbor, I sure wouldn't like that. Does that make sense where I'm going with
sure.
this?
I do understand your question, and if I may take that. So this property on 1530 Pomeroy,
Yeah.
This is zoned R318D, so it is not zoned single family. And
what is that zoning reference to?
It's the low density multiple dwelling.
Okay.
It's the R318D, and the property at 1502 is zoned single family. So 18D does allow the construction of 2 units on this parcel, and the project as proposed meets all the zoning regulations of R318D. So the setback requirements, the lot coverage requirements, height, basically all the zoning regulations, it does meet that.
Okay,
and
that explains part of it. Go on.
Yeah. Then when the project went to the development review hearing, That was the architectural part. To see,
Right.
but because and that's where we saw the architectural. That's where the architectural review happened. So where you were saying, if there is a window overlooking overlooking
1502.
1502. Also, the project did have a community meeting to take in the feedback from the community. Sorry, it was supposed to be a tentative map, so I was trying to keep the presentation to kind of focus on that. But there was a community meeting that happened before the development review hearing. And we had some concerns. There were a couple members that attended the community meeting, but that was not a concern that was brought up at that community meeting or at the DRH hearing, either of those.
Did the community like the idea?
There was, we did receive a phone call about that. It was more to do with the traffic, but we explained that that has been studied. The traffic impacts that the project would generate, but that has been studied through the initial study, and then MND has been adopted.
So I guess I'll go back to a question that Commissioner Chair Kuru asked, because this is a bit confusing, and I know we're entering into that era with all these new laws that this probably won't be the last time we're confused. But if we were to deny this, then it goes to City Council. And if they denied it, we're going to end up in a place we don't want to be. I mean, is that right?
You're a recommending body, so you can recommend approval, you can recommend denial based on the findings that are in the resolution tonight. But again, those have to be tied to objective standards if your recommendation is denial. If the city council, if the city council recommends, if the city council votes to deny, then it has the same findings it has to make. It has to be based on objective standards. If the developer then sues us for the denial, the court will look to see whether or not there were objective standards with which the developer did not comply. If the court concludes that that the city did not act properly and that the project should have been approved, then there is a statutory penalty of $10,000 per dwelling unit. So the city would face an $80,000 fine, plus paying the attorney's fees of the developer when they sued us. In addition, if the court concludes that the city acted in bad faith, in other words, the city deliberately violated the Housing Accountability Act, then the penalty is multiplied by 5. So our penalty would be $400,000 plus the attorney's fees for the developer. And then the project would get built anyway. So that's the scenario we're in.
Yeah, it's at, so I guess adverse impact, if there's an overview into 1502, for that matter, into 1501, if there's an adverse impact with traffic, something of that nature. I'm trying to think of the way to put this. If we were to deny it, we'd have to put in to the conditions something along those lines. I don't know that there is a way to mitigate traffic, or I know there's a way to mitigate looking into somebody's backyard, but I mean, it kind of sounds like our hands are tied, frankly, that if traffic was already something considered and determined not to be an adverse impact, if maybe the neighbors didn't bring it up, but I'm bringing it up, if there's a window into 1502 or perhaps 1501, I kind of don't think 1501, I'm thinking more of 1502, that would seem to be an adverse impact. And there is a way to mitigate it. You put the windows up higher, that type of thing. So that's my struggle. It's like, I don't know. I mean, had we done this the other way around, or perhaps at the same time, I could see it. I'm not interested in lawsuits and the like. I'm interested in doing something that works. Okay. And that it works for the residents and doesn't allow for lack of a better term, maybe some runaway development that doesn't take into consideration a neighborhood. Anyway, I think you've answered my question, Xander. I'm still not comfortable with it, but I will move on to Commissioner Ikezi, followed by Commissioner Salim.
Just one quick footnote, Chair. I did attend the development review hearing on August 18th, And the developer stated at the time that the houses would have high sill windows.
Okay.
So I'm sure he can speak more about that when he has his chance to speak. But
All right.
the issue of privacy was raised, at least at that hearing. So the development review officer was aware of it.
And that's helpful, but you understand why these are the kind of questions I'm going to have when the next one comes up too, and not knowing how the process happened, it kind of feels like the cart before the horse, which is going to raise these kind of questions. So let me move on to Commissioner Ikezi, followed by Commissioner Salame.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm hearing is that AB 3194 allows the developer to build 2 units on 1530 and 6 units on 5040, right? Oh, maybe this is a question to Xander.
Well, yeah, AB 3194 is a factor for the agricultural lot. The other lot is actually zoned fine. So it's only an issue for the agricultural lot, which is 1540.
1540.
And so as a result, they're able to use R336D, which will allow them to build 6 units.
Okay. Does 3194 require the city to allow subdivision?
Well, the Housing Accountability Act provides that the city can only apply objective standards when it does a subdivision. So no, it doesn't require the approval of the subdivision, but if we are to deny a subdivision, then we have to have objective criteria for doing so.
Do we have an objective criteria for denying subdivision?
Well, there are some objective standards that they have to meet. But I will tell you that if we bring something to hearing and there's an objective standard that the project doesn't meet, that means that either the planners or your attorney have not done their job. We would not ordinarily let something get all the way to hearing if it didn't meet a standard.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that in your professional opinion, the objective standards do require us to approve subdivision.
I believe in this case, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's why this was placed on the consent calendar, as as Misha said. Okay, I'm trying to understand the situation. When we had the architectural review meeting in August last year, were the neighbors at 1502 notified? Yes.
Yes.
Did they show up at the meeting?
I don't recall any of the neighbors showing up at that hearing. There were only a couple of people that were present at the meeting. We did receive, I am trying to remember, but I don't believe there were any comments received from 1502 Pomeroy.
Oh, okay.
I can recall.
Okay. And let's see now. Because I'm looking at the elevation, the backside of 1530, and there are some big windows looking over 1502 in those 2 units on the second floor.
Okay. I don't believe, I did attach the development review hearing report, the staff report with it, and that may have the plans. Let me see if I can pull that up.
Yeah, I'm just asking because, if the neighbors didn't show up, then I understand Chair Biagini's concern that maybe there is a privacy concern on the for the residents of 1502, but they should have shown up at the meeting. They were notified, and
Right.
if they didn't object, then it's really too late for this planning commission to be raising this issue now.
That's correct. This is a hearing for the condo map, and the architectural approval is already approved. I mean,
so that ship has already sailed on where the windows would be, because the neighbors were given the opportunity to provide their input on where the windows should go on those 2 units in 1530.
I believe the applicant would be able to share, on that as well, like how they worked with the neighbors to address
Okay, yeah.
concerns.
Yeah, let's find out if
Elevations.
if the applicant had any discussions with the neighbor. It's because that is a very strong concern of Chair Biagini. But what I'm hearing is that according to the 3194 and based on the professional opinions of the people in the planning department, the applicant has the right to get a total of 8 units approved and to get the subdivision. So there really isn't much wiggle room for this commission unless we make any findings in the objective requirements that will be contrary to these two things, 8 units and subdivisions. Does that summarize the situation?
Or that there would be public health and safety impacts, which are
Right.
very hard to find.
Okay, I understand. I understand that my fellow commissioners are very concerned about this issue, but I feel that the city is adhering to what the state requires, so our hands are tied. Thank you. I yield.
Chair, you're muted.
We'll move on. Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. We'll move on to Commissioner Salam, followed by Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Okay, well, take my opportunity to restate the obvious for everybody. Yeah, this is a done deal. The developers have pushed the envelope in all directions and just to the point where it would tear, and pretty much checked all the boxes and are proceeding ahead. I think of all the things that have been talked about in this discussion, the thing that concerns me the most is nothing to do with the development, but the fact that yet again, our lack of participation in the architectural review process is pushing this to the point where we're just basically rubber stamping something that's already been approved at every level except the level of commissioners or residents that want to have an input on it. So now it's a little too late. And as Xander has politely pointed out, there's not a lot to really talk about other than the fact that this is going to happen, and objecting to it and stomping our feet and being upset that the process happened outside of any observable control of the commission is kind of just wasting a lot of energy. So maybe we can proceed on from there. If the developer has a presentation, I don't know. It's up to I think the chair has the next steps to suggest. I really don't have anything else to say. I'm not happy with the process, but I don't have to be. It's not my job to be happy. Okay, thanks.
Move to Commissioner Bhatnagar. Thank you, Commissioner Salam.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a factual question for staff, perhaps. Just wanted to know, the new plan is by the same developer or a different developer from the last time?
I think it is the same developer.
Okay. So,
but it is a new site plan. It's a different design. It's a different layout.
Yeah, I understand. So that conforms my understanding of what Commissioner Salem stated, meaning, yes, some modifications have been made, but essentially that the boxes have been checked. And here we are. Well, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bhatnagar. I don't see any other hands raised from the Planning Commission. Help me out here a bit, Xander. Should we go to public comments first or have the applicant talk first?
Yeah, it's time for the public hearing part of this, and the applicant goes first and gets 10 minutes. then the
All
rest
right.
of the public, and then 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Gotcha. Okay, so if the applicant is ready to present their case, you'll have the floor.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, great, fantastic. Good evening. My name is Omid Shakeri. I represent the Richwest Group and the property owners. We are the developers. We are the same developers as before, but this project completely is different from the ones that was denied by City Council. This project, essentially what we did was we took the comments that we received at the City Council, the concerns they had with the other project. One, which was the original project had 2 buildings, 4 units on each lot. And one of the concerns was that having 4 units next to the single family residential was not proper. So what we essentially did was change the project completely. The design, everything is different, even the architectural design. We did a 2 single family home next to the single family homes to be a buffer. And then we did 6 townhouses, attached units next to the commercial, where there is a minimal impact on residential. I believe the general plan allows actually 11 units on this project, and we're doing 8. So we're not at the maximum density on this project. Regarding the architectural and the privacy, that there were some concerns. We have actually taken painstaking care to try to minimize any kind of windows that overview, as much as we could, overview the neighbors. We also, as far as the parking, there was issues that was raised as the parking. We are providing more parking that is required. Some of the parking, of course, problems there is created by the mechanic shop that is on the east side of the Pomeroy, in that shopping center behind the shopping center there. So we have added additional parking there to minimize any kind of impact. We have parking, 2-car garages for each unit, plus we have additional parking for guest parking on site. And I know that there were some concerns or issues regarding the subdivision versus the development. Of course, we did the development first because number of units has nothing to do with the subdivision. First, historically, first the commission or council essentially approved the number of units, then the subdivision that create those units. So as far as that, and then also regarding the general plan, the zoning inconsistency, this is part of the old orchard in that area. As everybody is aware, essentially the Santa Clara was all mostly prune orchard, plum orchard. And this was part of that, which because it was never developed, is the old houses there, the zoning area was changed. And there is that's why there is an inconsistency. And I think maybe Xander can correct me if I'm wrong. The Planning Act essentially says that if there's a consistency between general plan and zoning, general plan prevails. So beside the current law, the old zoning and planning laws essentially said if there's inconsistency, the general plan prevails with their standards. And again, so essentially as far as the meeting, we did have a meeting within the committee meeting. There was never an issue of privacy at the design review committee hearing. There was a neighbor, I think it was probably a few houses down. They had some issues. Again, they raised a parking issue, which essentially, that's something that we didn't create, or it's mostly the problem that is a mechanic shop is parking most of their cars out in the street, taking up the parking spaces. and has something that essentially we don't have any control over. So we are excited. I think this is going to be a very nice project. We're not new to Santa Clara. We've done several projects in Santa Clara. That includes 8 houses just down the street from here on Pomeroy, across from the school. We've done 8 units over at Homestead next to the church, Homestead and San Tomas area. And most of these projects that we've done there, we've done essentially taken care of doing a good projects, nice project. Most of them are more than 10 years old and they still look like they're new. So we're asking the Planning Commission to recommend approval for the subdivision to the City Council. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer.
Thank you. And again, I'm not sure I can see if there's any Planning Commissioner hands that are up.
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Cherukuru has her hand up, as well as Commissioner Ikezi.
Yeah, I don't know why. There it is. Okay, Commissioner Cherukuru, followed by Commissioner Ikezi.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shikari, for coming in. Just a quick clarification. At the time you went to ARB, I need a little more clarification from the state staff on this. The time you went to ARB, was the intent to actually sell each of those units?
No, the purpose of ARB essentially is to approve. I'm sorry, make sure that okay. I want to make sure I wasn't muted. I'm sorry. The purpose of the ARB was to get the design and the number of units. I mean, that's what the process is. So we did the process as it was required. Did we have a subdivision in mind? We were thinking about it, but they finally decided that we're going to do a condo map. But the number of units has nothing to do essentially with the subdivision. Subdivision always comes after the number of units approved. Even if on the PDs, if you kind of think about projects that come as a PD, first there is a PD approved, which approves the number of units, and then the subdivision is considered, and applications come one after another. So we didn't file it concurrently because we weren't sure what's going to happen. But lots of times there's times that also that they file concurrently at the same time, but not necessarily. You're not required to do it at the same time. I'm sorry, at the same time, the applications for a development and the subdivision, it's not required to be filed concurrently.
Thank you for clarifying, and I'll defer questions to staff later. But for all practical purposes, thank you again. In a time when we need housing, I do not by any means condone the ability to build. So I am fully supportive of additional housing within City of Santa Clara, as is much needed. We understand it, but I am going to question the process again with just how we've come here, because I have fully seen the success of these projects right down the street. Homestead has all these projects tinkered with a very similar interest. So thank you for keeping it to 8 units and considering the neighbors' feedback as well, and limiting to the 2 that faces the residential side and keeping most of the higher intensity on the commercial side. So a very thoughtful design. So I do want to commend your team to come up with the right design post denial. So thank you again for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. We'll move to Commissioner Ikezi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming back to try to develop this piece of land, because we do need more housing. Did you have a discussion with your neighbors to let's see now, 1520? Did you have any chance to talk with them? Did they raise any objection?
20 is the one next door.
Yeah.
We didn't direct. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You said that nobody raised any concerns about the privacy, but did you have any discussions with them?
I personally did not meet with them, but this is actually through all the process, we never heard from 1520, even at in 2018 process. I don't think they ever had a concern because they, we never heard from them. They never came to any meetings. They never came to the community meeting. And but we personally didn't walk to the house and knock on the door and talk to them. I did not, no.
Okay, thank you. Are you?
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. I see. Let's see. I see no other hands up on the commissioner side, so we could, I think, at this point, go to anybody from the public. I know you'll tell me if that's a wrong move, Xander.
Good move.
But I know we've had somebody very patiently waiting.
Yes, we do have one member of the public, Jay. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and we will allow you to speak now.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you'll have some questions for me because there's a lot to say in regards to both everything that you've been told, truth or not, inconsistency or not. It's interesting because AB 3194 is just a loophole. He's trying to work around it. I recognize that. The Planning Commission recognizes that. It's basically rubber stamping. The discussion over windows and privacy, that's a subjective thing. It's not objective, so there's no point of even talking about it. Our rights are taken away with this law, and the spirit of the law has really been abused by this developer. If we're looking for an objective standard in order to provide evidence to deny this, we can simply go to the fact that over these 5 years, there's now a community intent which has been brought up previously. It was a consideration. It was a problem with the MND as well as the SECA and the EIR in the fact that there was a significant impact to health and safety should mitigation activities not be met. Over these years, the issue has even grown. Not only has the issue grown, but the MND that was used for the architectural review was the one used for the previous project. It wasn't even updated to represent the current project layout. So not only have the setbacks been decreased and the impact increased, but the overall health and significance of the impact is going to be greater. So understanding the lawyer's concern about $80,000 times 4, you now have a 70-foot tree falling down on my house, the neighbor's house, causing multiple millions of dollars of damage and potentially life. So you can consider that as an objective reality and the falsehoods given to you based on the documentation provided to the Architectural Review Board and what's been shown to you today. So I've got 15 seconds. I'll just let that be for now.
Are you finished? Much appreciated, Jay. I think at this point, if there's anything that the applicant wants to respond to, this would be your opportunity.
I don't believe so. I think that we pretty much said, unless there's a question.
All right. Thank you very much. Then I would not seeing any other hands up at this point, but Elizabeth, you will keep me honest if you see something I don't. But without any other hands up, I would entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Moved.
Second.
Okay. Elizabeth, you can
Sure.
take the vote
Give me
on
just a moment.
closing.
I'm sorry, it was seconded by,
Huang.
thank you.
Huang.
So the motion is to close public hearing. Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Wong,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Salim,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So at this point, if there's, we have Commissioner Ikezi, we can entertain a motion and or discuss where we're at right now. I will recognize, I thought Ikezi had her hand up. Cherukuru does. Did you have your hand up, Commissioner Ikezi, and I missed it?
Apparently not. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Commissioner Cherukuru.
just a clarifying question of staff. Probably I'm losing track. Up to how many units can ARB approve without it coming to Planning Commission, especially a housing development project? What constitutes an ARB approval? I'm asking more number of housing units.
Right, architectural review is divided into staff level reviews and then public hearings before the development review officer. Those are the two avenues. Either it's just staff level or there's the DRH hearing. The DRH hearing is required for any multifamily housing development. So if it's multifamily of any number, it goes to the DRH. DRH decisions are appealable to the city council, but don't automatically go. But
Okay.
Does that answer your question? It's
Yes,
either
thank you,
staff or
Xander.
DRH, and all multifamily of any number go to DRH.
Okay, this is precisely what I think Salim was referencing. So Planning Commission is really no job anymore. I mean, what are we doing here? So I am, probably even regretting the ARB's ability to run with its level of credibility, because most people, and I say most people, as a common layperson who probably thinks what's coming before a design review, a zoning administrator, or whatever be the title here, ARB, is like not big significant project types. And so nobody pays really attention when they truly seem to have the ability to approve n number of housing units without even a subdivision.
I do want to just clarify, the Planning Commission's role is on very significant bodies of work. The creation of any specific plans, the creation, tonight we have our climate action plan. You guys also, the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended approval of our Patrick Henry Drive.
Yeah, Rena, let me finish my thought.
Standards. I know, I just want to,
I know, but let me finish my thought.
There are larger projects with EIRs that are brought forward too.
Understood. Let me finish my thought. So let me finish my thought. I understand. I know what we do. So I'm not doubting what we do already. But I want to emphasize, probably to the commission, but also later records, that ARB has in its ability to approve n number of housing units without Planning Commission's input or probably, any visual on it. But the Subdivision Map Act comes to the Planning Commission for recommendation. So it kind of is literally where we are today is by our own intent to allow ARB its power. So I just wanted to bring that in, that we did this by ourselves. So technically the process will continue, and we will be in this situation where we practically are like a pass-through for all its nuances. We're a pass-through. And so the only way to probably ratify this is to revive or revise the ARB regulatory. And short of, again, a zoning ordinance change, it probably is a little more arduous, but I did want to bring that thought in, that housing units, the number of housing units will continue to be a challenge if it's not bundled as a subdivision / housing / M&D / approval for city. Anyway, Rena, now you can continue your thought.
Yeah, no, and I just, and I understand the frustration. I do want everyone to also understand that the world changed. We are all talking about why the world has changed between our last approval of the last consideration of this particular project and today. And state legislation laws are on the books now. When it comes to, so if these items came to the Planning Commission, the limitation that the Planning Commission would have would be on objective standards, meeting objective standards. So I just, I know there's a real interest for the Planning Commission to look at these things. That's a comfort level. I understand that. But I just want you to understand that the world today is different than it was prior, where we now have laws on the books that limit really the city's review. And really the value is in our standards. Are our standards ones that we want? Therefore, should we change those standards? Because whether it's Planning Commission, whether it's staff or the development review hearing, those are the things that we're going to be held to, is the standards that we have adopted.
Understood, Rena, and I'm not defending that. I'm just saying that the ability of ARB, I'm not even talking about the state, the ability of ARB versus the Planning Commission is where I'm going with this.
And Chair, if I may, just to add to what Rena said, because this project was utilizing that assembly bill, that's why it did not come to you. This project would have probably been a plan development rezoning as it was in the past, and that would have come to you for recommendation. But because they're able to use that assembly bill, that's why this particular project didn't come to you for that architectural review.
I think we're all painfully aware of that. I think we have, let's see, Commissioner Salam. Did you have your hand up?
Yes. Yeah, I think we're kind of getting this as a perfect poster example of developers using state laws to wend through the system with whatever they prefer to have done and throwing up laws left and right to justify it. I'm also, I've said it before, I actually do feel I have to say it again. We're constantly being throttled on our ability to impact the process and the standards by staff with multiple ways of shielding by the idea that when we want to proactively involve ourselves in helping to set those standards and helping to close these loopholes and places where developers will find all of the possible edges and profit from it, we're hit with the fact that, whoa, it's not in your purview to participate in any of the process that involves objective standards. Well, I'm sorry that everybody's overworked, and I'm sorry that, staff has their list of priorities, but as a deciding or a recommending body, as Xander reminds us, we should be able to provide our opinions and our input on setting these standards without being short-circuited constantly by statements of it not being in our purview or not being in our problems or in our defined state of activity. So I think as a group, we either shut up and accept the fact that that's the way it is now, which is what I'm hearing as a suggestion subtly, or we actually continue to pressure to have a deeper involvement at the architectural review process again, and also at the step-by-step process of setting what these objective standards are, so that there isn't this kind of a surprise result later. And hopefully the council will hear these words unfiltered and unedited and take that to heart and suggest that some of the activities we've been proposing to be more involved will actually be granted as a part of our process. So that's my political statement for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salam. Let me move to Commissioner Ikezi.
Thank you, Chair. Since we're talking about our political opinions, my opinion differs from Commissioner Salam. I think the state passed this law for a reason. There have been projects in other cities, large-scale housing projects that were turned down because of inconsistencies between the general plan and zoning. As everyone knows, we have dire housing shortage in our state. Millions of people are suffering from it. And I think, the cities have obligations to produce housing wherever possible, whenever it makes sense. And I'm of the opinion that this project being proposed will add valuable housing to our city. It's in a good location. The density is reasonable. So I make a motion to approve the MNDNMMRP.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will insert my comments here before we go to the motion.
Chair, may I interrupt? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just to clarify, the MND and MMRP are not before the Planning Commission
I
tonight. Those
thought.
were already approved in August. What's before you tonight is a resolution to approve the subdivision of the property. I'm
Okay.
sorry, a resolution to recommend approval of the subdivision to the City Council.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
I misread the report, the staff report. I apologize, Chair. I make the motion to recommend to the council to approve the subdivision being proposed.
In other words, the recommendation by staff, is that basically what we're saying?
Exactly.
All right, and I assume Commissioner Huang, your second still stands?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me make my closing comments on this before we go to the vote. Commissioner Charakuru, Commissioner Salim, points very well taken. I understand, Rena, what you're talking about, and Leslie too. And I think probably everybody on the commission and the planning department recognizes that things have changed. And they've changed in a way that's going to make what happens in the future uncomfortable. And to me, this is just the beginning. So the fact that it's changed, I understand. I think the bigger question now is what are we going to do about it? It's not something we can answer tonight. So can we proceed then with the motion?
Sure. So the motion, Commissioner Casey, seconded by Commissioner Wang to approve staff recommendation. Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Charakuru,
Was exactly my voice too. Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Salim,
Yeah.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion passes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we can now move on to item number 2, 22-374, which is the study session climate action plan update. Staff? Wait, I see an attendee hand up, but I think we're past that point now.
Yes,
Elizabeth.
we do have a hand up in the public. Can our attorney tell us if
The public
which-
hearing is closed. I'm afraid it's not time for public comment.
I understand that, but if he chose to write a letter, does that work? To the city council?
Yeah, the city council will be hearing this. This is a recommendation of the city council, so the speaker is welcome to either write a written comment or appear at that hearing.
Okay. And my apologies, guest Jay, but I think that's your opportunity now. So I hope you take it. Then we'll move to the study session.
Yes, thank you. This is Nimisha Agrawal, Associate Planner and Project Manager for the Climate Action Plan update. I'm going to try and share my screen correctly. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good evening, Chair, and good evening, Planning Commissioners again. We are here with the CAP team is here. We have John Davidson, the Principal Planner, Michelle Templeton, Sustainability Manager, and our consulting team of Cascadia. We have Andrea Martin and Addie Bash to help answer any questions that you may have at the end of the presentation. I would like to go over the agenda of for tonight. We want to provide you with a brief background and purpose, go over the timeline, the community engagement, what we heard from the community on this process, and also share with you what we heard at the Planning Commission and City Council study sessions, and also provide you with an overview of the proposed targets in the draft cap and discuss in detail about the focus areas. We'll try and keep the presentation as brief as possible. There's a lot to cover. I'll try my best. And then we want to spend some time on the discussions and questions that you may have. So to start, about our current climate action plan. So our current climate action plan was adopted in 2013, and it implements cities' general plan goals and policies for sustainability and environmental quality. It has a target to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions 20% below 1990 levels through the year 2020. And this is consistent with the Assembly Bill 32. Why we need the update? That's the question. Since 2013, California has adopted a number of laws that add requirements for local jurisdictions to assess climate change and analyze and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that is the reason why we are looking to update our climate action plan, or CAP, as I will refer during the presentation. Another reason is that our current CAP, the 2013 CAP, has goals through 2020. So we are looking to extend the city's greenhouse gas reduction goals to 2030, consistent with the Senate Bill 32. Another benefit of updating the CAP would be to have a qualified CAP, to have the streamlining benefits. To explain briefly what a qualified CAP is, it means a CAP that meets the criteria specified in the CEQA guidelines for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Subsequent projects can then use the qualified CAP without having to do individual greenhouse gas analysis, and which can be very burdensome. So we started this CAP update process in January of 2020, so more than 2 years ago. We started with taking Cascadia Consulting on board through an RFP process, and we started off with city staff interviews in March of 2020, gathering information on the ongoing efforts and where we are on those, followed by the stakeholder focus group interviews, the first round in April. We also conducted an initial community outreach through an online survey in June and July. We were changing gears here during the pandemic to keep our climate action plan efforts going, the update going. In July of 2020, we had the City Council overview of the sustainability program, and we also conducted the first virtual community workshop. With all that information, we came to the Planning Commission for a study session in August, followed by a second study session in October in the fall of 2020. We conducted a second online survey in October and November timeframe. And then again, all the feedback from the Planning Commission and the community, we went to the council in March of 21 for the study session, followed by a second study session in July. Again, taking the council feedback and more community feedback, we drafted and further refined our draft climate action plan and made it available for public comment period in August, September timeframe for 4 weeks in fall of 21. To kind of take a comprehensive feedback from the community, we tried different avenues while so during the time the draft CAP was available for public comment period, we also conducted the virtual community workshop and also had a second round of stakeholder focus group interviews. And now we are here presenting before you with all the information and wanted to provide you with the draft, with an overview of the draft cap that we have. As next steps here in the bullet two bullets here down below, we would be, sorry about that. We plan to come back to the Planning Commission hearing in April and take it to the City Council for adoption hearing in June. Just to give you an overview of the community engagement throughout the process, it was an integral part of the CAP process, CAP update process. We conducted the 2 rounds of stakeholder and focus group interviews, as I mentioned, and that involved reaching out to various community organizations, sectors, and opinions, business interests, the data center community, the Youth Commission, Santa Clara University, Santa Clara Youth Climate Action Team, ABAG, Transportation and Mobility Advocates, SVP, and also the school district. We conducted the first survey to establish CAP priorities early on, and we received 400 responses on that survey. And the second survey was conducted in November of 2020 to understand the community's level of interest and support for the various actions in the draft CAP. And on that, we received nearly 500 responses for a cumulative of 900 responses. The virtual community workshop conducted in July of 2020 had 38 participants, and where we sort of introduced the various alternatives we had, target alternatives. Later in September 2021 was where we presented to the community the draft CAP and took their feedback on it. The Planning Commission study sessions and the City Council study sessions were well attended by the members of the public, and we got some good feedback from the public at that time during those study sessions. The draft CAP, we made it available to people using our interactive tool, it's called Conveyo. It seemed to have worked well. We received a pretty robust response from the community. So just to go over the common theme, the biggest common theme that we heard from the community, that they wanted to see the city as the climate action leader, and they wanted us to set they wanted the city to set ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets. Going over the priorities that the community wanted in the draft CAP was to increase the amount of renewable energy SVP provides, Silicon Valley Power, adopt an all-electric or electric preferred reach codes, and that was before it was adopted last year in November, an all-electric reach code with exceptions. The community also wanted us to look at reducing the vehicle miles traveled and improve the transportation network for cyclists and pedestrians, and promote electric vehicles, and overall increase the regional mobility and mobility options. Through all the different avenues, we were conveyed by the community to promote voluntary and incentive-based measures. There was a preference for those kind of measures. And the community wanted us to align with the existing city plans, which we did through the process. Also to expand partnerships with private sector and other local organizations to support CAP implementation and prioritize co-benefits of climate action planning. The next slide here shows what we heard from the Planning Commission at the 2 study sessions, just sort of sharing here the themes that we heard from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission wanted us to set an ambitious target. And again, City of Santa Clara, they want to see us as a climate action leader, reduce VMT and promote electric vehicles, focus on reducing the data center and energy consumption, facilitate telecommuting to have a reliable internet, and also the incorporation of the REACH codes. The next 2 slides here would list the council directive that we received. during the study sessions. So I'm going to be reading these out because there is no better way to say that. But it was, the first one was to adopt an interim greenhouse gas reduction target of 80% by 2035, in addition to the near-term target that was consistent with the SP 32. And that may rely on SVP achieving 100% carbon neutral electricity through rate increases of 44% to 55%. And this would be on top of the typical 3% yearly increase. There was a direction related to the transportation demand management, the TDMs, 25% reduction in project-based VMT through active TDMs for large commercial employers, and that is for the employers that are 500 employees and over, or over 500 employees, excuse me. And that may result in aggressive regulations to reduce parking in new development. Also, this percentage was 20% for multifamily residentials, and which may result in parking maximums. Further, to adopt an all-electric breach code. Again, this study sessions happened before the REACH code was adopted in November of last year. Change the proposed all-electric breach code requirement for provision of EV-ready parking spaces in new developments from 25% level 2 and 75% level 1 chargers to 25% level 2 and 75% light level 2 at 3.8 kilowatt using an automatic load management software to balance the loads. Also to add a requirement for new developments to include one secure bicycle parking spot for multifamily residential unit with it's available in storage units. Also to prepare a policy to replace gas furnaces and water heaters upon burnout with an electric equivalent. To implement a climate action tracking dashboard, and for new data centers to rely on 100% carbon neutral electricity, including offsets as needed. So all this feedback that we received from the community, the Planning Commission, and also the Council, these have been adopted as actions and strategies throughout the draft plan that we are presenting before you today. And I will get into that later in the presentation. So what are the proposed targets in the draft cap? The near-term target is to have a 40% reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 in alignment with Senate Bill 32. Also to have an interim target for council direction of 80% reduction in GHG emissions by 2035 and a long-term goal of carbon neutrality no later than 2045 that actually exceeds the executive order by Governor Brown. I don't remember that year, but the executive order said that the carbon neutrality by 2045, and we have a long-term goal that exceeds that executive order. Here's a graphical representation of our targets. So the 3 bullets here, they show our 3 target goals. So first is the near term in alignment with the SB 32, the interim goal, and then the long-term goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. So as we can see here, so this blue line here, the dark blue line here is the business as usual. So if we had no regulations, then how would the emissions grow over time? Should also explain in this graph, this is the emissions and this is the year, probably obvious, but just wanted to say that. The blue, the lighter blue or green, if this is all the external factors such as the federal, statewide, and the regional policies, and that would contribute almost 75% or 72% of the reduction of the emissions. The area shown in orange here is the reduction that we would achieve through CAP actions, such as building electrification and energy efficiency, renewable energy generation, electric vehicle infrastructure and adoption. And the last one here in brown is the additional actions that will be required to reach the long-term goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. And here we list the additional actions such as achieving 100% carbon neutral electricity from SPP, expand electrification and efficiency of existing buildings, accelerate EV transition, expand transit and active transportation infrastructure. So now we talk about the focus areas within the draft cap. There are 5 focus areas, and here on the right column, the column on the right lists all the strategies related to each of the focus areas. So we went through a whole extensive process of developing these strategies and then further refining them through a multi-criteria analysis, narrowing down these strategies. The first bullet here under buildings and energy, the shift to electric fuels in new and existing buildings to achieve zero net carbon buildings was achieved partially through the adoption of the REACH codes. The few other, instead of reading all of them out, I just wanted to emphasize a few that are likely to be significant in reducing the emissions, maximizing renewable energy generation and storage capacity. The one under transportation, transition vehicles to electric alternatives, and expand use of non-SOV transportation modes. In the next few slides, I will go over each of the focus areas and kind of highlight for you some of the actions. These are not all of the actions, but highlighting some of the actions here before the Planning Commission. So the first one is about the REACH codes for new construction. These are the actions in the draft plan. And we have Michelle Templeton here who can answer any questions that the Commission would have at the end of this presentation. The next one is the carbon neutral data centers. So what it says is that to require all new data centers to operate on 100% carbon neutral energy with offsets as needed. This is one of the direction from the council, and you heard it before. This requirement does not apply to data centers with planning application approval within 6 months of the cap adoption date. And we've also mentioned the year. So all the actions have been divided into by implementation timeframe. So it's the year 1 is the year 2022. The near term is defined as 23 to 27. So just wanted to note that. The next one is SVP Integrated Resource Plan, or the IRP, for carbon neutral electricity. So examine resource procurement and cost scenarios to provide 70% carbon neutral electricity to all customers by 2030 to meet the SB 32 climate goals, and 60% renewable electricity to meet SB 100 climate goals. And also to explore SVP achieving 100% carbon neutral electricity by 2035. The next one is B1-1, to work with BARAN and other local jurisdictions and agencies to expand the current financial incentives to accelerate electrification in new and existing buildings, and also looking at the city facilities, the electrification of the city facilities, to work with the regional energy partnerships to develop that further. Some of the highlights from the transportation and land use focus area. The first one is EV charging for all new construction. So we have an action here in the draft cap to implement all electric and EV charging REACH code to require EV ready and capable spaces, and that is for the first year. Also to fund and accelerate implementation of the pedestrian master plan and the bicycle master plan, and that is a near-term action. Municipal charging infrastructure to expand municipal facility charging infrastructure to serve municipal fleets, employees, and public charging needs. And the last one is the Tdm Plan Requirements. So we wanted to make sure that we are able to take the direction received and also clarify it enough for the projects that come in. So we say that in the draft gap says to continue to analyze projects through the city's VMT policy of 15% reduction below countywide baseline through the TDM measures. And for the new development projects that are exempt from the VMT analysis for the city's VMT policy would also be exempt for additional VMT reductions for the climate action plan. And also that previously entitled projects that are already subject to VMT requirements or TDM measures would continue to follow the requirements assigned at the time of entitlements. Further, as we had discussed earlier, the feedback from the council or directive from the council requiring 20 to 25% VMT reduction through active TDM requirements for the projects that are not exempt. Some of the highlights from the materials and consumption focus area to have compliance with state solid waste ordinances, waste diversion pricing signals, to explore or promote existing incentives for recycling and composting and discouraging landfill waste. And these would both be in the first year, for actions in the first year. The food recovery and donation, continue to partner with local agencies to implement an edible food recovery program as required under SB 1383, and this would be a near-term action. The next focus area is the natural systems and water resources. Some of the actions in this focus area are urban forest partnerships. So the action is to promote healthy, well-managed urban forests by participating in the county's Urban Forest Alliance partnership. The next one is to continue collaboration with agency partners such as South Bay Water Recycling, Valley Water, to diversify water supply portfolio and expand current resources. And these are both the year one actions. The next is the right-of-way tree planting to promote residential tree planting in the right-of-way. And then the sustainable park management to enact sustainable park management practices, including continuing to transition from gas to electric powered landscape tools and increasing recycled water use in public works. And the last one is to community resilience and well-being to support people experiencing homelessness. And then there is an action related to climate resilient land use and development. So because it was not possible for us to share all the actions here and read them, but we are just listing here the year one and near-term actions, but the draft gap that was here, which was presented to you as an attachment, had all the long-term actions as well in there. So as next steps, we just want to move to the questions and discussions, but we want to come back to the Planning Commission for hearing in April of 2022. And then hopefully go to the council for adoption hearing in summer of 2022. And this concludes my presentation. And like I said, the GAP team is here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, we have some hands up. Commissioner Huang, followed by Commissioner Cherakuru.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, my question is, So by 2045, we have neutral. Does that mean no carbon emission at all? Question to the staff.
Right. I believe that it does not necessarily mean no emissions at all, because it does include any offsets. And Andrea, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's correct. It would be net carbon neutrality. So if there were some emissions remaining from the city, it would just need to be offset to result in neutrality.
Okay. My second question is for data center. Since we know we have a lot of data center here. The goal is, yeah, I remember, yeah, exactly. So carbon neutral data centers, is that does that mean it's the electricity they consume coming from clean energy? Is that the only thing?
So we do have the action say that requiring all new data centers to operate on 100% carbon neutral energy, but it also says with offsets as needed, so that there will be the option for offsets in that as well. Andrea, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's right. And I guess also just pointing out that there's also an action related to backup generators.
Exactly.
So I think this would be applicable as well. So, you know, would necessitate offsets if a backup diesel generator were used, for example.
Yeah, actually, my concern is that is on the backup diesel generators. Since before we had some project, new data center. I support the data centers, but then to be honest, I do have some concern on the diesel backup generators. My point is, if they can get rid of those diesel backup generators, use the electricity, either redundant or battery, I think that may be a better solution. I don't know just how much we can have an impact on the new data center design. I think SVP, the Silicon Valley Power, I think they have I mean, a lot of resources and the influence on this. Just my 2 cents. Thank you. Yeah, I yield, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wong. We have Commissioner Charakuru, followed by Commissioner Salim.
Thank you, Chair. And first off, excellent work by the city. It's been a long, very intense journey, but very thoughtful engagement with several stakeholders. So I appreciate all the hard work leading to this point. And we are headed in the right direction, absolutely needed from being good citizens of the planet and good stewards of our cities and its resources in the future. Nimisha, if you could go to slide 9.
Sorry, I'm trying to see what slide number that is. All right, I see it now. Apologize, it looks like I'm having some technical difficulties.
Can you move just up?
Yeah.
You're on 14. So
yeah, I am not able to. I'll just stop sharing and see if I can pull it up again.
Okay, and slide 9, I just wanted to highlight a couple of nuances of our efforts in a progressive way. Santa Clara is, of course, a new, we have a lot of young blood, I would say, but we're also a city that wants to age in place. One of the targets that's indicated in slide 9, okay, hold that slide.
Yeah.
Adopt that may rely on SVP achieving 100% through rate increases of 44% to 55% over the top typical 3%. And I know many of us receive this, yet another increase in your electricity charges, yet another bill increase. Not many of us pay attention to it because we probably, one, don't have the time. I would love to write a letter someday, but this 44% increase, 55% increase is not insignificant to people who are on limited incomes. We are, in effect, in a progressive way, probably creating a gentrification within itself. As we, with all of our prior efforts, increase housing, it's not, again, as a housing demand, there is no yield in real estate or dropped prices because we've increased housing. So just one observation, but as we increase the new ability, well, we'll probably draw a different population and a different income level. But I am the voice right now of the seniors who want to retire here in place. We are actually pushing them out, and the low income. A 44% to 55% increase. I mean, if you're paying $100 today, you will be paying $150 right off the bat. So that's something to keep in mind when we are making our proposals. Yes, it's all in the right direction. Yes, they're all aggressively good targets and goals, but also know the implication of implementing these targets are significant for several households in Santa Clara City. We will become a new city in its economic status, but we are not enabling aging in place. We are not allowing the low income to thrive here like they have historically done. The incomes, and I don't see low income. Low income in Santa Clara probably is double income at 6 figures already. So just keeping in mind that what we are recommending is something that people understand the impact of it. In your bills, in your actual day-to-day life, gas is what today at $6? Yes, good effort, but nobody knows the real effect of all the Teslas and the batteries that are coming up later down the stream. We haven't even evaluated it. So I want to, all progressively good ideas, thoughts. The other, if you go to, I think on the transportation slide, on the goals, Nimish, and I apologize if I'm long-winded here, but I'm trying to make a point. Okay, hold that. No, yeah, the previous slide. Okay, transition vehicles to electric alternatives. Okay, on one end, we are limiting parking. Okay, on another end, this one is basically saying buy an electric vehicle. We are not saying thou shall go into a bus or thou shall go into a train. We are saying electric alternatives. And guess what most of Silicon Valley is doing today? They are not traveling by bus. They are just adding more electric vehicles into their pool. That does not limit the need or demand for parking by any means, even though our goal is there. So I'm just putting reality juxtaposed with aggressive goals. We are just going to have that many, at least growing pains before we arrive at a future Switzerland state or whatever be the ideal realistic goal that we want to have. But the clarity is like you will be limited in parking, but hey, we want you to have electric vehicles. And two, the cost implications is not of insignificance. So with that, I yield, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherakuru. Nimisha, you had comments.
No, I was just saying that I'm not sure if you had a question there, but just wanted to add the first part of the comment on the rate increase. So it was the council's directive to include the interim target, and just for the transparency and clarity, and because it has been a collaborative effort with SVP as well, we wanted to provide that information and add that information for a transparency to the community.
Oh, absolutely. But I don't think people are listening in first for that form. The reason I put this out explicitly is I'm hoping that the media catches it somehow and actually makes it, at least to eyes wide open. But I'm also trying, again, transparency. Obviously, I read the council directive there, so I wasn't, trying to dilute that intent. I just wanted to highlight the realistic aspect of implementing a 44% increase in your bill is not, and in another 5 years, every year. So just keep that in mind. It's not that a one-time 44% increase. Again, Nimisha, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know the trajectory of the electrification of SVP.
John, do you want to take that? I don't know if I have my numbers correct.
My take on it is that it's a one-time 44% increase to implement the clean energy, and then rates would stay that high in perpetuity, but it wouldn't be 45% year over year.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, well, let's get the facts straight there, John. So, okay, thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Charakuru. Point well taken. I mean, being forewarned is being forearmed, I suppose, about something that we should be aware of. We have Commissioner Saleem, followed by Commissioner Bhatnagar, followed by Commissioner Ikezi. Commissioner Saleem?
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit more nitpicky because I read over this and I'm very deeply behind the idea of electrification. I think it's a reality for the future. And I want to make sure that you realize I want to support it. I also want to make sure we get there without tripping and stumbling over some of the details. What was the comment made about conversion of gas water heaters to electric water heaters? Is it only on remodel, or if a water heater fails, is the expectation that the owner transition at that moment?
I believe there is an action related to the burnout policy, but it also is part of the REACH codes. Michelle, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So in relation to the REACH codes, that would of course be only new development. And that would be all appliances would be all electric for all new developments. In relation to a burnout policy, that would need to be developed, is the development of a burnout policy. And that's what we'll be looking at, is what kinds of grace periods would be involved in that.
Okay, that's interesting because I kind of just faced it myself over the last week. Our gas water heater is starting to give up the ghost, it's starting to fail. And then going through the process of trying to discover how to replace it effectively, it turns out it's a cascading effect. The gas water heater uses 12 amps on a 15 amp fuse. It's pretty minimal. The gas water heater needs a dedicated 30 amp fuse with almost 20 amps standard pull, which doesn't sound like much. But when you're in a house where the panel's maxed out, it implies, oh, now we have to adjust the panel. And the panel is maxed out because the house has electric cars that need charging, and gas is not being used for washer dryer or for other appliances. So it's kind of already at the limits for its electric capability. I brought some of this up, I think, in our previous meeting when I was talking about the impacts of going electric on things, and that our homes are not currently sufficiently wired to provide the power necessary to really switch over fully. I hope that we can find a way to find some subsidy or find some way that Silicon Valley Power can pre-evaluate somebody if they're trying to consider switching up from gas to electric. Because if they don't, there's going to be a situation where a major gas appliance fails, and the cascade effect of trying to replace it with something fully electric is going to blow past anybody's financial expectation. Cost of replacing a gas water heater is relatively cheap. Cost of switching to electric, improving your switch panel, improving your line to the street sometimes, that could just turn into a tremendous effort. All things good for the future, but truly a nightmare for the person at the time that the situation happens, because they're going to be without water until a lot of this is done. So we may need, I think we should have at least some kind of policy in place to have either a Silicon Valley Power review of their situation, or have a fallback for them to be able to afford the transition. So it's more of a statement, but thank you. I just want you to think one level next of what's it going to cost people and how are they going to absorb the cost. It's stuff we have to do. Remodels make complete sense. You're going to already be investing substantial amounts to upgrade your house. Going electric for your appliances makes a total sense. But if you're caught off guard by an appliance failure, then instituting a required upgrade at that point might blow out of someone's limited income and budget. So that's it.
Thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to address that briefly, that one of the actions in here is to provide incentives through SVP, exactly like what you're mentioning here. So that's going to be a critical part of a holistic approach to electrification. Is one is starting at new development when it's going to be cheaper in the long run for all involved. The other is creating policies around burnout, but then the other is sort of some kind of support to those folks needing to change out. And currently there is an electric panel upgrade rebate through SVP's extensive rebate programs. I encourage anyone in the public to check out SVP's rebate page. There are rebates both for businesses and for residents. So we're starting down that path now so that we can prepare as this transition to electrification really hits.
That's really good to hear. I appreciate your thinking that way.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Salem. We'll move to Commissioner Bhatnagar, followed by Commissioner Ikezi.
Yes, thank you, Chair. 2 quick points. One, following Commissioner Salem's points here, I think one of the things that I worry about is, some kind of a risk mitigation strategy with respect to becoming too focused on one source of energy, for example, right? So imagine a situation where everything in the house is electric, and so in the neighborhood, and there's a power line down or some catastrophic situation, weather-related situation, and now you're stuck. You cannot do anything, absolutely anything, right? So having an alternative source of energy, let's say some gaseous source going to a cooktop or even water heating or something like that could keep you going, and you can potentially think about some risk mitigation that way. In business, if you get too concentrated with one customer, it works both ways. It's great to have that customer's confidence, and the problem is that the day that customer confidence reduces or loses out, there's a world of hurt. So anyway, I'll stop there. I have a naive question, and forgive me for asking this. I've never seen a calculation that tells me, for example, if I were to drive in a medium-sized car, a gasoline-fired car, from San Francisco to LA, I produce, you name it, 2 metric tons of carbon dioxide or 0.2 metric tons of carbon dioxide. I have never understood how that math works. Does anybody here know? And if not, maybe we can revisit that sometime later when this presentation is made next, or you can tell me now. Thank you.
Does anybody want to take that on? Thank you, Commissioner Bhatnagar. Nimisha? John? Anyone?
I can answer a little bit of it.
Okay.
So for a gallon of gas will eventually produce, well, when it's burned, it produces 20 pounds of carbon dioxide. So that gallon of gas, so if you say your car gets 20 miles to the gallon, over each mile, just with that simple calculation, you're emitting a pound of carbon dioxide. So a trip to Los Angeles, if it's 500 miles, would be 500 pounds of carbon dioxide emitted. So that's my simple explanation.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to Commissioner Ikezi, followed by Commissioner Salim again.
Well, if we could pause for a second, I can answer a question that he just asked from a slightly different perspective while we're still in context, if you'd let
Please.
me. Okay. Yeah, I just made the trip from Santa Clara to Santa Monica and back, EV only. And my wife had made the similar trip recently on her truck. And her round trip cost, I'm just going to talk about fuel costs. Her round trip cost was $83 in gas before the current prices. My round trip cost in supercharger charges was $17. I produced 0 emissions. She produced, who knows, as was already stated, a ton of emissions. So there's more than just the emissions level considerations. There's actually also the cost of fuel. As gas prices go up, I think people are going to find EV a super attractive approach to getting from point A to point B. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salim, for your answer, and Commissioner Bhatnagar for your question. Let's move to Commissioner Ikezi.
I want to thank Commissioner Cherukuru for pointing out for raising concerns about the 44% rate hike. I'd like to know a little bit more about it. Is this really going to happen? And has the city looked at other alternatives like issuing bonds to invest in new facilities? Can I find out more about this?
Yeah, so it's something that we anticipate would happen. This is going to be further studied, of course, through the implementation of the CAP and also through the integrated resource plan that the SVP has. SVP has the integrated resource plan, and CAP relies heavily on what is in the integrated resource plan, which is basically a plan for SVP to how they will be procuring energy over time in the next few years. So it's not something that is for sure. It's something that would be studied further during the implementation and through the IRP process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. Let's see, I have hand up. Commissioner Salim, did you have another comment or just didn't lower your hand? I wasn't sure if you were completed with your comment. Okay, so Commissioner Huang.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, my question is, right now maybe the city have some incentive to replace appliance. Any thoughts on solar panel? Any incentive to for that? Thank you.
I do believe there is a solar panel program. Michelle, do you want to speak to that? And I think we have an action related to that in the CAP as well.
Yes, so there are solar requirements also I wanted to mention for the reach codes, and there are mentions of solar in the climate action plan. We do again have a variety of different incentives for businesses and for residential. As far as solar programs are concerned, we have had more robust solar programs in the past. And currently we do have a solar grant program, a low-income solar grant program, as well as Silicon Valley Power is willing to come and assess what kinds of options you have for solar on your property.
So all this program is on Silicon Valley Power website or?
Yes, so the Silicon Valley Power has rebates, as I mentioned, for residents and for businesses. So you can go to Silicon Valley Power, there's a residence bar, and you can go down to the rebates, and it'll show all of the different rebates that Silicon Valley Power offers, everything from electric bicycle rebates to electric clothes dryer rebates. Heat pump water heater rebates are one that we're really excited to be offering now. The electric panel upgrade that I mentioned, electric vehicle charging station rebates, low income electric vehicle rebates, and low income solar, as well as pool heat pump rebates. And the business section has its own set of rebates, of course, because they have different needs. And some of them are very similar. So electric charging, electrification programs, food service equipment, we're looking at lighting, everything from air conditioning, HVAC and heat pump, optimization. And of course, the best energy to use is the energy you don't use. So energy efficiency is a strong customer service offering that SVP has for residents and businesses.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
And just to
all-
add to that, yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Namisha.
So I was just going to say that we have an action related to that under Buildings and Energy, which speaks about expanding the city's solar grant program.
Okay, thank you. It's all on Silicon Valley Power website. Okay. Yeah, I yield.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Huang. We have, let's see. We have Commissioner Cherakuru and then Commissioner Salim.
Thank you again to Commissioner Huang for raising that interesting concept again. So historically, solar panel program did not pan out from a financial perspective only because our Silicon Valley Power rates were subsidized, but it was the ROI was, much more significant. But now, if it does go up, so I am interested in the understanding on the solar program to alleviate some of our usage of Silicon Valley Power with the additional increase, especially. And again, the rate cost of increase might not be a bad idea because the whole premise of data centers has been primarily because Silicon Valley Power was so low and the carbon neutrality. So, more data centers will probably think twice before coming to Santa Clara. Historically, the carrot has been that we had the lowest cost per wattage in the region compared to even surrounding cities. So, it's a silver lining of all the additional increases in cost. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherakuru. I'll move to Commissioner Salim.
Yeah, these are all such close to home topics. I just recently, and this is something I do every year, reevaluated solar as an option for my home. And the first question they ask is, do you live in Santa Clara? And I say, yes. And they say, well, that's great. We can't help you. I mean, it sounds flippant, but it's actually a fact. Unfortunately, cost of equipment, lifetime depreciation, et cetera, lease back for sale, lease of product, in this case, producing electricity to feed back into the grid. Nothing got it down below 16 cents per kilowatt hour. And they've been going at, they got their pencils super sharp. But we're so cheap. We are a golden child of power for this state, even, I think, at this point. I don't know what to do for us as a city to encourage solar if buying solar costs more. Maybe some rate increase will help incentivize people to rethink that, but I guarantee you that people are not going to shell out $50K for a solar system for their home if they know that in 20 years it's going to fail and it's not going to be worth as much and they can't sell the power back and for enough to justify it. And it's a very tight circle of problems. So I don't have any answers. I hope Silicon Valley Power is looking for ways to make it a more appealing option. Something on our tax base or something that gives back for having solar as a green energy solution for the home. Anything like that, please investigate it, because I want to be solar, I want to be green, but I can't afford it. And what a crazy thing to be able to say, I can't afford to be solar. It's nuts. We should all be doing the best we can to get green as quickly as possible. It's a statement. I'm sorry, I didn't have a question embedded in there, but hopefully you can dig deeper and see if there's ways we can make going solar something that really appeals to Silicon Valley, well, to Santa Clara specifically, but to people in general. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salam. And yes, I have been down the same road about solar. Crazy. And I'm not going to repeat comments that a lot of my fellow commissioners have stated, other than I sure hope to God stove manufacturers out there understand that people who like to cook prefer gas burners. You better get those electric stoves working a lot better. We have two more hands up, Commissioner Huang, followed by Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, Sunrun, that's a pretty popular solar company here. But yeah, actually, I checked. They just don't do business in Santa Clara. What's the problem? I really don't know. It's their, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I just say, I don't know what's going on. I mean, why they don't do business in Santa Clara? You know, I say I'm a Santa Clara citizen, you know? Yeah.
That's a good question. Thank you, Commissioner Huang. Moving to Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I really just wanted to register my appreciation for the city staff. This is a very big ball of wax, and you've done a very commendable job of trying to address many, many different aspects of it. So thank you for putting so much effort and time and helping us understand and getting us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bhatnagar, and I couldn't agree with you more. Looking at the PowerPoint, seeing all the work that's been involved, this was one huge job and it's not finished yet. So much appreciation to city staff. I don't see any other hands up right now from my fellow commissioners, but I do see that there's a couple of guests or attendees that are willing to talk. This might be a good time to go to them. Elizabeth?
Sure. We have two speakers. The first one with 2 minutes will be Dashiell Leeds.
Go ahead, Dashiell.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the Conservation Assistant for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. We're in strong support of the draft climate action plan. I would like to highlight a couple things that are going on in other parallel climate action plans in other cities that we can maybe consider incorporating here. So there was talk of potential rate increases for Silicon Valley Power. And I would just like to highlight San Jose's recent draft existing building electrification plan that just got public about a week.
Did we just lose you?
Yes, I think we did.
We'll make sure he has the time. Dashiell,
Sure.
there we go. I think you can still talk.
Oh, okay. Is my internet cutting out here?
It must have been.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, hopefully I can finish this comment here without cutting out again. I just recommended looking at San Jose's existing building electrification plan for examples of tenant protection language that would be good to include. I also would strongly recommend considering Ithaca, New York's electrification turnkey program as a model voluntary solution to supplement potential mandates that may come down the road. I think that San Jose's existing building electrification plan has a retrofit accelerator program, which I think is really exciting and could be a model for streamlining the electrification permit process in Santa Clara. I do want to make a couple quick comments. First, that for new gas appliances, such as water heaters and furnaces, they have electric starters. electric pumps and fans, so they actually don't provide any additional resiliency in the face of a power outage. I think the future of resiliency really looks like backups paired with microgrid solutions and solar panels. And then fortunately regarding stoves, even though there's an initial consumer preference for gas, once people try electric induction stoves, they actually tend to stick with them and don't go back to gas. So I think education goes a long way in terms of getting that stove technology out there. Thanks so much, and we hope you approve, or we hope you recommend adoption of the Climate Action Plan.
Thank you so much, Dashelle. We have another person in line.
We do. Vanessa Shin, we are unmuting you, so you may go ahead and speak.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity and for the presentation today. I'm Vanessa on behalf of Santa Clara Youth Climate Action. Again, wanted to echo appreciation for just the opportunity to engage in this process throughout the last 2 or so years. And actually remember participating in one of the planning commission meetings early on where commissioners recommended really strong, ambitious targets and being a leader. So again, thank you for that. I had a few comments. I wanted to encourage the planning commissioners to consider the health impacts of methane gas in homes. I remember reading in the last few weeks just some really scary reports and articles about how gas stoves and other appliances are linked to asthma in children and older adults. And as someone who isn't a homeowner, I rent. I don't have control over appliances, so really do express support for electrification policies, especially for existing buildings upon burnout. And then I also wanted to point out some information about the rate increase that I found on the FAQ for the Climate Action Plan website that helped me, I think, better understand or picture what that increase will look like. And on the FAQ, it states that rates will likely increase over the next 15 years. That amounts to an annual rate increase of about 6%. So like many of the commissioners, I was very concerned to see that huge number, but to see it a little bit more in perspective and across a year over year was helpful for me. And then finally, just wanted to emphasize my support for the Climate Action Plan implementation dashboard in order to continue the public with the opportunity to continue engaging and just be able to understand how the Climate Action Plan is being implemented. Thank you so much.
We do not have any more public speakers.
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I don't see, I'm assuming no e-comments either. I guess I shouldn't assume.
In this case, you can assume you are correct. We do not have any e-comments.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I don't see any other hands up. So I think this might be the time to close the study session. I don't think we need
Chair Biagini.
Yes.
I know that our sustainability manager wanted to plug something about, I'll just let her do it. Michelle, can you just use this opportunity before they close the study session?
Yeah, you didn't actually have a question, Chair, but you did mention gas stoves and people's commitment to gas stoves. I just did want to bring that up because it's great timing. Silicon Valley Power has been working for a couple of years to try and get an induction cooktop stove cooking class going. We have our second one coming up, Vietnamese cooking. The first one was Winter Soups. It's a 12-part cooking class series offered in partnership with the Adult Ed. Silicon Valley Power partnered with the adult education program with the district, put in an induction cooktop, a bunch of ranges at the adult school so that community members can go to the class. So I would encourage everybody to get out there and take a class. You're only allowed to do one class so that we have enough room for everybody to take one across the year. But induction cooktops are changing very rapidly. And what people think of as electric cooking is not the electric cooking of the past. They're a lot safer, 44% lower numbers of asthma in homes when you don't have gas stoves. And they're also a lot safer as far as fires and heat and touching. So just, you teed it up so perfectly. Thank you for letting me take a moment to share that new program. And I really would love for community members to take advantage of SVP's hard work in getting that going.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm going to sign right up for that.
I tried to sign up, but for some reason I couldn't use the coupon. I just wanted to let you know because I want to take that class.
Thanks for letting me know. I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Okay. We don't need a motion, do we, to move on, Xander, or do we?
No, there's no motion necessary.
Okay, I want to thank everybody. This was a hot topic and a really good conversation. So much appreciated. Then let's move on tonight to, I got to take a look at where I'm at. Reports of commission, board liaison, and committees. Uh-oh. Do we have any announcements or other items? I see a hand up, Commissioner Cherukuru.
I wouldn't call this an announcement per se. I just wanted to share, not as a planning commissioner, not with any political sound to my thought here, as a layperson, many people have almost shared their sympathies, their interests, their condolences for the way we are being presented in the media about our city council, about the city staff imploding on itself. It's pretty, what should I say, sad for our city to be projected like that. As a person living in the city, I can truly attest that we are one of the best cities that is safe, thriving, diversity, inclusive, understands the needs of its residents, responds to it. So some of the statements, and I'm going to go both ways, I'm hoping that this gets attraction both ways. With the city council, is you were elected to work in a cohesive and collaborative way to bring productive results to the city. That was the mission. So we hope you'll remember your promises when you were running for your elections. The other is the city staff. You know, it was pretty discouraging to read in Merck News the city manager's statement of why we are losing staff because of the lack of cohesiveness with city council. So it kind of seems like there's just no unity within our city leadership, both within administration and within the elected. So I'm just making a plea. I want to even commend, and when people ask me, you know, in many, many different ways, because it's in the media, I say Planning Commission is one of the most professional bodies that we have. The collaboration that we build on, even when we are disagreeing, we do it in a respectful way. We build on each other's feedback, or we professionally state our opinions. So I just wanted to, I don't like to sound political by any means, but I have been receiving the constant feedback from people. So I'm just making a statement here that please watch what you tell to media. It adversely affects citizens in the city, whether you think of it as that or not. So both to city administration, please watch what we tell the media, whether it's vested interest or a statement of fact. The perception is very different. So just an announcement, and I won't call it an announcement. It's just my plea here. So thank you, Chair, for allowing me to engage.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru, and I second that emotion. Anyone else have announcements or other items? Or we can move on to Commissioner travel and training reports and or requests to attend trainings. Rena, you have your hand up?
Yeah, no, I was just, I myself wasn't, and I apologize. I think this was maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I apologize. I don't think we heard, did you, any of you who attended the Silicon Valley, joint venture Silicon Valley event, State of the Valley event, did you, any of you kind of provide like a synopsis or an sort of a telling of that. I just didn't know if we captured that the last meeting. I myself wasn't able to attend. I've read some materials, but I didn't know if the commissioners had already given that like feedback or information.
Through the chair, I can go. Great reminder, Rena. Thank you. I was there virtually, but I was curious. So there was in-person seating. So I'm hoping that eventually, with all of the limitations and restrictions going away, that we get back in person again in that venue. Very, very well put together again, as always. Gave a leading indicator of our growth. Santa Clara was mentioned in one of the best lights there. So again, in all of its contrast again with the prior media news, at the Silicon Valley, we were mentioned as one of the cities that had issued some of the largest and most number of permits. And with, I am assuming it's primarily because of some of our high density projects that have been permitted, related, and some of our other housing projects. So we were mentioned in good light. Again, a very juxtaposed conversation about the demand and the housing costs continuing to build, while again reining in some of the jobs that even with all of the great resignation, there were certain areas and industries that were more impacted. But then Silicon Valley seemed to be more thriving on some of the tech. So again, an indicator of how some of the jobs and some of the hospitality related services are slowly inched out from the tech market. So just a couple of my observations. I'm hoping others had others.
I'll move to Commissioner Salam. Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru.
So yes, I heard everything that Commissioner Cherukuru heard, but some of the areas that I focused on were growth of innovation and technology and innovation in green sciences that they were mentioning. We're apparently in a boon of startups. We are at a point apparent from the statistics presented, we're at a point equivalent to the .com boom. Not the bus side, hopefully. We don't have to travel down that path again. But the number of individual startups, the number of investments, the number of venture capital people pouring money into this valley is at a crazy high. And we as Silicon Valley need to provide a warm home for them so that they can stay, develop, and expand their businesses and their ideas and keep jobs and residents living here. One of the other sides of that coin, though, was a different corollary study that I was reading about. The exodus is still happening. There's still a lot of people leaving California simply for the reasons of inability to have a lifestyle here, affordable homes, and just general lifestyle that is conducive to families. And we're still the great mecca of, I don't want to use the word nerd, but it's appropriate. We're still the nerd central. We got people rushing in here to make their ideas happen, to make their fortunes, to make big differences and change the world. That's great, but we also need to let them grow up, have families, and be able to be called residents of this valley. So it's our responsibility to try and push hard to provide enough housing and enough job opportunity to keep people here. I genuinely hope that happens. It's kind of iffy right now from what I'm seeing. But so that was the area I focused on. Hopefully others would care to jump in on their particular experiences. Thank you.
I too attended virtually. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And my big takeaway was, like Commissioner Salam, the number of jobs are back to pre-pandemic level, or it's getting there. Everybody's wondering, with a lot of people working from home, how is that going to impact our real estate in the valley? I think we're going to have a massive housing shortage again. We're going to have the rents are going up. I think when people are only working or showing up at work 3 days a week, I think a lot of employers will look at it as an opportunity to add more people at their sites, with each employee showing up fewer times per week. But the net result is, we're gonna have a lot more. I think the housing need will increase. So I think as the city and the planning commission need to be mindful of continued demand for more housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. Commissioner Batnagar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In addition to what the other commissioners have said, I think the main presenter who spoke for about an hour and presented lots of data and lots of graphs, I think he hosted the conference pretty much, did a superlative job of making the points with data. And one of the things that I took away was, surprisingly, and he said this in this region in the Bay Area where we pride ourselves as being a very diverse culture, very diverse place. Just in general, we all believe that. I mean, we live it every day, and that engine has been driven by the tech revolution. Though he took a different tact on that, and if you looked at the data, for example, economic stratification by ethnicities, right? That's not diversified at all, right? I mean, a lot of the immigrants are all at the bottom end of things and so forth. And in addition, for example, even leadership positions, right? They're not diversified at all, even gender ones, right? Very few women in leadership positions. So I thought that was very well stated with data, and it shows us some of the work that still needs to be done. I think we are still much better than many parts of the country, but there's some work to be done on our understanding of diversity and actually making it be fruitful and impactful to all of us in our daily lives. So that's an important, I would say, learning that I had not been exposed to. I thought of myself as living in this diverse Mecca, but perhaps it's not quite as diverse as it could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bhatnagar. And I will say this, I thought it was another fascinating outlay, and I would strongly recommend the planning department and anybody else interested in getting a copy of that report, because I tended to focus the same way you did, Commissioner Bhatnagar, over the widening of the economic gulf, the gender issues, the ethnicity issues. It's clear to me that Santa Clara is not an island. There's a lot we can be proud of, notwithstanding some of the negative stuff you read in the media these days, but there's a lot we can be proud of, but we are certainly not an island when it comes to a lot of the data that was presented. Commissioner Salam and Rena, Commissioner Salam.
I feel like I'm just doing all the talking. I don't mean to, but the other point was brought up very clearly. The economics of this valley are not common to the country. Our measure of poverty is actually above the survivable poverty levels of everywhere else in the country. You can't live here for what it costs you to live other places. So when we measure our affordable housing, we need to measure it with a really strong view on the fact that it's going to be high to even afford. I'm already stated, we need to bring our affordable housing down lower than what we consider affordable for it to be affordable anywhere else in this country. And so we're living in a bubble, we're living in a fantasy land, and we got to stop thinking of our residents and homeless and other people as just not able to buy homes. They can't. They literally can't. Oh boy, I'm really rambling. Okay. The numbers don't work in a national sense. We have to start thinking about the numbers in a local sense to measure who we consider in poverty or affordable housing levels. Hopefully I said that right.
Absolutely.
Jeez,
Well put.
I wandered all over the map for that point. Sorry about that.
No, you're right on point. And Rena, I got to thank you for reminding us to talk about that. And I see your hand up.
Yeah, no, I didn't. And thank you all for your observations of listening actually to, and I know they always do such a good storytelling job with the numbers. And so I'm bummed to have not viewed it, but I did download the report. I forwarded it to folks in the department. And I just thought it was such a contrast, right? The themes about tech growth and yet outward migration away from the county. And really, for people who haven't seen it, you can download the report. I found the two most interesting pages, page 14 and page 9. And just like the headers of page 9 are literally Silicon Valley's innovation engine is red hot, right? And there's a description about that. Commercial development continues at a breakneck pace. And the context of this is we're in the pandemic with remote work, right? Yet commercial development is happening here. Yet the region's population is declining. And when you go to, their section on people and talent and diversity, you see that Santa Clara County is like tied really with Orange County, and it follows Los Angeles County for the most amount of people leaving the county for elsewhere. So it's just like this interesting contrast in how tech is like booming, 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 and yet there are definitely people who can't live here. So I thank you so much for sharing all that, and I enjoyed hearing it and then also reading the report.
Thank you, Rena. Do we have anything else in this category? Request to attend trainings? Oh, Commissioner Huang, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just I remember they have the speaker have a data. See, 40% of the children living in a family just barely can live here. 40%. Oh, that number just scared me. I don't know how to interpret it. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Hey, I think you make the point. We need to rethink what we call in this valley affordable housing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Shall we move on to Director of Community Development reports? Planning Commission budget updates?
Chair Biagini, if you don't mind, I did send an email to commissioners about 2 more trainings that are coming up, 2 more conferences. And I wanted to make sure everyone was aware. If you take a look at what we have up on the screen. So I did ask commissioners to take a look at your calendars. And if you wanted to attend any of the upcoming ones, the APA National Conference in May, and then I did give a heads up to everyone about the October conference. So wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thank you. I'm just hoping there's an online capability, at least for the one in May.
There is. They're doing, if you take a look at that, it says May 18th to the 20th will actually be virtual.
Good. Ah, yes. Thank you. I'm sorry.
So this is actually a snapshot. I put this together of what we can expect on an annual basis of conferences, what takes place.
Do we have to take a vote on this, Elizabeth?
No, we don't right now. But I would appreciate if everyone would look at their calendars, and if you want to attend the May conference, we have time to vote on it. But now's the time to kind of figure it out. Okay.
Yeah. How about the October one? Is that also virtual? Probably not.
Is that also? Oh, we don't know yet.
Okay. Thank
you. It'll be virtual, yeah, we don't know yet.
So the council mentioned that maybe in-person meetings may come back in maybe end of March, April. Is that something that we're looking into also?
So, and Xander's pretty good at tracking this, but I think the council, because we're past the, oh Lord, I'm gonna say this wrong, but there was certainly state directive on holding virtual meetings, and now it's really up to jurisdictions on a monthly basis to continue the virtual. And I think we're going to follow the council here for a few reasons, but I think I think they've, a couple of them have definitely expressed wanting to be back in person. But they did, I think at yesterday's council meeting, extend this through March. So I think that early April is when they would take this up.
That would be great. I'm turning out soon, very soon. I'm hoping to see everyone in person before I go.
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Commissioner Salam, you have your hand up?
Seems endlessly. I just wanted to personally apologize for my confusion over the conference that was not remote that I signed up for that I had to cancel out of. That was not intended. My original intention, I was assuming it was remote, and I am quite happy to be remote, but anything involving travel is something I'm trying to avoid right now. But just my apologies for having created some churn on that.
Me too.
It's not a problem. Not a problem.
I'll
Thank you.
share everything I get with everyone. How about, okay, I think that takes care of budget updates. We'll move to upcoming agenda items.
Actually, we did not do the, I'm sorry, we didn't do the budget update yet.
No,
We'll do
God,
it very
I'm sorry.
quickly.
That's training.
Okay.
I'll pull it up real quickly. So actually with the cancellations for the conference, your budget now has gone back up.
Okay.
So you now have 12,032.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
All right, how about now we can move to upcoming agenda items.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got a couple of items coming up for you in April. So your April 13th meeting, as you heard at the beginning of the CAP presentation this evening, will be coming to you for actual recommendation at your April 13th meeting. We also anticipate bringing to you the Freedom Circle specific plan at that meeting. And then we're adding a special meeting on May 11th for the commission to consider an ordinance around SB 9. Those are the things that are coming up in your future, and that's all I have for that.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
City council actions.
The last two council meetings, there were no actions to report that had to do with any land use items.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a couple of things that I wanted to say before we adjourn, or maybe I should say adjourn for. One of them is, I don't know if he's on, but I think we all heard that one of the stalwarts in the planning department, someone that I must say, before I ever got in the planning commission, I would hear on and on about how Jeff Schwilk was wonderful to work with, from family members that deal with a lot of cities in terms of development. Everyone always spoke so highly of Jeff Schwilk, and now he's retiring assistant planner after 31 years with the city of Santa Clara. I just want to extend on behalf of the Planning Commission our sincere thank you, congratulations, and best wishes for the next phase in your life. I see you clapping, Leslie. Yeah, exactly.
Steph is
gonna
not
be a
here,
big
but we will
one.
absolutely pass that on to him. Make
You
sure
better.
he sees this.
And tell him don't be a stranger. I'm sorry. All right, and then I think before we do an adjourn, I don't know that anybody who hasn't watched the news lately. I love your backdrop, Commissioner Huang. I'm going to try to figure out how to
Thank
do
you.
it for me too. Ditto, Commissioner Salam. Could we please take a moment of silence? I don't want to say in memory of, because that sounds a little doom and gloom, but a moment of silence in hope for an outcome that's beneficial for the Ukraine. If we could take that moment of silence now. Thank you all. I will share, Elizabeth, with you bona fide organizations that are doing outreach to those that are suffering in the Ukraine that you can share with my fellow commissioners. And these are ones that have been
Sure.
verified.
Thank you.
So I think at this point, I'm ready for that motion to adjourn the meeting to the
Motion to adjourn.
Wednesday, April 13th meeting. Thank you, Commissioner Slim. I'm sure I have a second there somewhere.
Second.
Second.
All right. If there are no objections,
I
meaning
bet.
if there's an objection, raise your hand right now. I will consider this meeting adjourned.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
all.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.